Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Bothell City Council meeting for October 21st. If you join me in a Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. We are almost a full council. We're missing Deputy Mayor Spivey, who is currently serving Protecting Lives down in Bellevue this evening, and he is absent and excused. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look over the meeting agenda for this evening. I'll give you all an opportunity to chip in, but first I'd like to state that AB 14159 will be pulled, not even for consideration this evening, but it will be coming back at a later date. Any other items that might be? Yes, Councilmember Evans.
Yes, Mayor, I recommend that we add 30 minutes to the Agenda Bill 14-163.
I'm certainly in agreement with that. Everybody else? So that'll be 60 minutes for AB 14163 for the Nicochapa area considerations. Other items tonight? Councilmember Sandberg?
I wanted to pull Agenda Bill 14156, the surface use agreement for the Madrazo Park, from the consent agenda, please.
Okay. Anything else?
I'd just like a moment of personal privilege before, after your presentation tonight.
Okay, great. Rayum, Councilmember Rayum, anything? No? All right. Next projected agenda. Everybody should have a copy in their folder this evening for the meetings that are coming. I'd like to point out a couple things. Our next meeting will be November 4th. November 11th, we are off, and then back again on the 18th, and then the 25th. And on the 25th is actually scheduled to have a meeting with the 1st District legislators to discuss upcoming legislative session priorities. Any things that are missing from the projected agenda, or any points anybody would like to make? All right, seeing none. I have the opportunity to give a certificate as a point of memory to put on Peter's wall as he departs his service from the Planning Commission. We've been honored by having Peter Bachuelo serve on the Planning Commission for several years, and he's made a great impact on our city. Peter used to work with Parametrics, and now I have to look up the spelling. Innovex, I think, is, let me say it correctly, Peter. I apologize.
AECOM. They spelled it wrong.
They spelled it wrong. But a managing principal for that company, and it specializes in environmental management and such. So the city of Bothell has definitely been a beneficiary of your influence on the Planning Commission. We thank you so much. It's a pleasure when people come forward to offer their services to the city, and it's nice that we've received some great input from you over time, and certainly you and your family with your wife have had a lasting impression for the next 100 years on the face of Bothell. And the planning's gone on to downtown. So, Peter, thank you so much for your leadership there. I'd love to give you this certificate, and if we can all just thank Peter, that would be great. Great. Point of personal privilege for you, Councilmember Lamb.
Hey, thank you very much, Mayor. I wanted to take a moment because today we have a member of our Bothell family who is going to be traveling to Sierra Leone. That's Kelly Melton, who is a firefighter here in Bothell, has volunteered of her own time and her own vacation time to take a step kind of into the breach and to help deal with the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. People often ask, why is Bothell such a special place? Why is our city such a special place and the people that work here? And Kelly, I think, is emblematic of the spirit of the Bothell Fire Department and of all of our employees of really being willing to step up in a moment of national and international need and walk into an extremely dangerous situation. And so I would just ask everybody, she will be there for a period of 3 weeks. She's traveling there today. To keep Kelly and her family in your prayers and keep her important mission in your prayers as well, because it's something that has a great impact not only in West Africa but for the rest of our world.
Really appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you so much, Councilmember. Next item on the agenda is our visitor section, which we give members of the public 3 minutes to address council. And I do have some sign-up sheets here. This is, by the way, for people in the audience, for items that are not currently scheduled for public input this evening. So the first sign-up that I have here is Hannah Willander. Is that correct? And I definitely have your address. Yeah, if you want to go up to the podium, make sure the little green light is on
Okay, it is.
the speaker.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Hannah Willander. I work for the Washington State Nurses Association, and I'm a registered nurse. I represent the nurses who work for Seattle-King County Public Health. I wanted to let you know that because of budget cuts, the county is planning to cut North Shore Public Health. That is a clinic that serves many members of your community for maternity support services and for WIC. Maternity support services involves home visiting by nurses and clinic visits to help moms, especially young teens. We have a lot of teens, have healthy pregnancies, eat good food, stay in school, keep going on their jobs, and then have healthy outcomes of those pregnancies. And we're very concerned that the county is selecting Bothell as the location for the closure. We've been lobbying all of the city councils in South King County. I don't know if you had heard, but White Center was planned to be closed, as was Auburn, and as was Federal Way. We've been successful. Our red T-shirt campaign is working. We're getting the word out there to the public that this is not okay. We need to continue to serve those clients, and the clinics are placed strategically around the county, and to lose this one would be an absolute calamity. If a woman were to take the bus from Bothell to Eastgate, which is where they're planning to locate, it would take 2 transfers and almost $5 in bus fees one way. That's not acceptable. They're talking about implementing some smaller clinics, some satellite clinics, but they can only accommodate so many. And what we understand is between 800 and 1,000 clients will be without services due to accommodation. We have requested, and we're requesting of you as well, to please write a resolution opposing the closure of North Shore Public Health. They're in a building that is slated for sale. That's okay. We don't have a problem with that. But we have 17 staff there who are dedicated to these clients. And we'd like to see the county move them to a storefront location that's cheaper for them to be in and to manage, and for the clients to continue to have access in this area. I have some information for you. I'll give it to Laura. And do you have any questions for me?
Just out of curiosity, is it a center that's on 145th?
Yes.
570? Okay.
That's correct.
I drive past that every day.
Yep. A lot of clients go there. We have over 13,471 people were seen there last year.
13,000 people.
13,471 people.
Wow. Well, I don't know if the council as a whole wants to take this up at a future meeting to discuss consideration. What is the timeline in regards to getting a resolution in?
They're talking closing it on December 23rd of this year. It's coming soon, but any support you can lend us is helpful.
Councilmember Sandberg has a question for you.
Yes.
What is your relationship to the new Health Point clinic that's here on Beardsley Boulevard? I thought that some of the services that were being provided out of the North Shore Public Health Clinic were shifted up to this Health Point clinic,
That's
but I'm
correct.
not sure of the relationship.
That is correct. We have an agreement, well, they have an agreement with Health Point to staff one person there. Let's see, I have I believe it's 2 days a week or 3 days a week, but only one person can be there at a time. And maternity support services involves a public health nurse, a registered dietitian, and a social worker working in collaboration with one another in a team to provide services for these sometimes very high-need clients. So if there's only one person there, then the team concept doesn't work, and we don't think the clients will get the best services.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more. Councilmember Evans?
Thank you for that information. I wanted to ask a question. On our human service grants that are coming up for consideration, I know there's 20, 30 agencies there that we fund for human services, and I don't recall whether this organization is on there because we do send money to other areas of the county.
No, I don't recall them being on there.
Would they qualify for a human service grant from a? So I guess when this comes back to the staff, that would be good to get a report from the staff of if we could supplement or do something with a grant there. I mean, we're funding agencies that are all over the county, and we've always wanted to keep those funds here closer in the Bothell area. So if that's a way to do that and help this situation, it would certainly be a direct impact to our area. So I'd be interested in hearing that. Thank you.
That'd be great, yeah, thank you. Yes, and Councilmember Evans, we also, Federal Way was able to support the Federal Way Clinic by giving $221,000 for the next 2 years. And they're currently in discussions with the City of Auburn and Muckleshoot to try to retain the services there for Algona, Pacific, Auburn, Maple Valley, and Black Diamond. And so all of the cities have committed to helping financially to bridge this gap, because we believe that if we can bridge the gap, the budget shortfall, we can have them be self-sustaining.
Great. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming this evening.
Yeah, thank
We
you.
look forward to receive what you give to Laura. Second person on the sign-up sheet, I have Sandy Gwynn. Sandy, are you wishing to address us just in general or on a specific matter? Yeah, great. Thank you. Nice to see you, Sandy.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight I will talk about the Regional Fire Authority process. At a prior meeting, I said I would be back when I had 500 signatures asking Bothell City Council for a fair process for Bothell residents, requesting that there should first be a vote by Bothell residents to determine if the RFA, Regional Fire Authority, should go forward. If the majority of Bothell residents vote yes, then place the RFA on the ballot for all of the residents in the Regional Fire Authority area. Tonight I am depositing the signatures I have collected so far, about 200. All summer I've been experiencing very painful back problems, and I haven't been able to walk very well, let alone walk up and down steps. I'm in therapy, and as soon as I get well enough, I am going to go back out doorbelling. But I wanted to be sure you received these 200 approximate signatures. A huge concern I have is that the public is not being provided the information to review at the Regional Fire Authority subcommittee meetings, as well as the committee meetings. An example, there were going to be 2 full committee meetings a month that would meet at night. This has been reduced to 1 and replaced with subcommittee meetings during the day. First, most people work and cannot attend the subcommittee meetings during the week. I am one of them. Second, for a 2-hour subcommittee meeting, the subcommittee minutes that are posted to the web, Bothell's website, consist of less than 100 words. It tells me nothing. Third, documents distributed at these subcommittee meetings are not being posted to the city's website. Citizens don't have a clue what is being talked at these meetings if they should happen to attend. Fourth, the draft feasibility study was provided to commissioners and discussed at the committee and subcommittee meetings. When I initially requested a copy, I was told no, I could not have it. I had to make a second request, and then they researched and learned that they were legally required to provide me a copy because they had brought it forward to a public meeting, and they distributed it to commissioners. Once you do that, the public has a right to have it. They've changed and said the revised draft, it's not going to go to the commissioners now. It's going to go to staff. So I don't know if that information is going to be taken from there and discussed at these subcommittee meetings. And again, it's less than 100 words for a 2-hour meeting on these minutes. Fifth, the illegal executive session that the Regional Fire Authority meeting held, and I was requested to leave the room. I would like a detailed explanation of what was discussed at this illegal executive session. And I previously distributed a memo to you from an attorney that explained that you can't have an executive session.
Okay, thank you.
And in short, I'll summarize. The open process sucks. It needs to be fixed, and for the common average citizen to be able to understand and want to get involved. I happen to know a little bit more of the process, and I will push for it, and which is what I'm doing now. Thank you.
Thank you. That was to the point. Councilmember Sandberg.
Ms. Gwen, I had a couple questions for you, if that's all right. Ms. Gwen, Can I ask you a question of clarification, please? Can you give us the date that that executive session was held that you are referring to?
Off the top of my head, no.
Okay.
But I can
But it-
research it and give it to you.
Okay.
If you checked the city's website, they are posting the committee meeting minutes, and in there it was when I challenged or not challenged, but I questioned whether the city manager should sign the contract because some of the fire districts were not posting the proper notice for a special meeting. Mm-hmm. And I was questioning whether that contract would be valid if these meetings were not properly noticed.
I know that you
So
given
it
us
was right after
yeah.
that the they called an executive session. In fact, I think one of my own Bothell City Council members recommended during the meeting that they not talk to me, not ask me questions until they have this executive session.
Okay. Yeah, I know you wrote about this. You gave us written testimony to this previously, but I don't think I can lay my hands on that piece of paper as quickly as you could. So if you could provide that date, that would be great. And then I know we've had conversations about this draft feasibility study, but I haven't gone to the website yet to look for it. So is it not posted, or maybe someone from the planning
couldn't find
committee
it.
can respond
And
to that?
if it is there, I apologize.
I thought I had asked that it be posted to the website.
yeah, that's what I thought.
And if it isn't, I'll go back and check on that again.
Appreciate it. And if we can get the current draft,
Well, and that's the issue of drafts, as you well know, Sandy, are always in a state of flux. They're changing. And I think the concern is, and I guess I just want to assure the public that anything that happens with that RFA is going to come back to this council as a whole for the city council to make that decision whether or not we proceed with it. And that may involve an election of the people. It may involve a decision here. But everything that, once that information, and we're still in the process of reviewing tons and tons of documents and information, trying to figure out what's the best way, or is there a best way for this. And when that gets boiled down to something that is a draft of what is the recommended approach, then I think, if not before, but certainly by then, the public will have a chance to review all that. We're not trying to hide anything. We're just going through the process of doing the study.
I'm here because I want you to understand my frustration as a citizen. When you have the comprehensive plan amendment, that's not a final document, but it's a draft document that you get input from citizens.
Mm-hmm. But it is a draft that's been prepared by the staff as a final draft coming to council for review.
Or a consultant. No different from what this is. And when I hear things like we need to let citizens know that there may be 3 closings of fire stations and 2 new ones built, I don't know if that's going to be in the document itself, but it's being expressed as a concern by one commissioner, and it's not being necessarily supported by any other commissioners. When I hear that this feasibility study is based on an hour, a rate per hour, I think you were at the meeting, and I can't remember at the top of my head, I left my notes in the car, $45.60, but it's not going to be anywhere in that final document. I want this to be open. I am so frustrated that I'm not spending my time trying to absorb the information and understand it. I'm coming before you just because of the process. And as I said before, it sucks.
So, Sandy, Ms. Gwynn, you were looking for the City of Bothell Fire Services study? Is that right?
Feasibility study.
So
draft
it is
by the consultant. It's not one that City of Bothell has done. Mm-hmm. It's the draft feasibility.
So I do see a draft consultant contract. I do see a City of Bothell Fire Services study. I do
That's
see.
not the same.
There's at least 8 documents on the website, and I'm curious, maybe it's just the title, but as Councilmember Evans said, he's requested it would be put up.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Councilmember Agnew?
And Ms. Gwynn, just for clarification, I'm on the financial subcommittee, and we have those meetings at nights. They're not
Do
during
you?
the day at all.
Okay. When I pulled up the minutes, and I'm depositing them also to you, along with the signatures. But these are just, even if it is at night, it's less than 100 words. I mean, these minutes, it says, presentation by Bill Cushman, discussion of committee scope of work. That was the planning committee. And it was called to order at 10 a.m. and adjourned at 12. The Labor and Organization Subcommittee, 3:30 p.m. and adjourned at 5:30. Again, it's just a little brief, and I'm just trying to have it a little bit more transparent. Here's the Finance Committee was called to order at 5:30, so you're correct on that one.
Yes, and I'm not sure who you heard that fire stations are closing down and fire stations are being built, because that was news to me, and I'm on those committees.
You did not attend many of the regular Regional Fire Authority committee meetings. You've been absent from quite a few of them.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the public that would like to address council this evening for items that aren't currently scheduled for public input? If you would come forward and state your name for the record.
My name is Patty Bellisy. I live at 2614 242nd Street, Southeast in Bothell. I was surprised to receive a fax mailer from the city recently. I know we have a pro and con committees for the Proposition 1, but the city's fax mailer is very similar to the pro mailer. The city is acting like a shadow pro committee. The city is using our taxpayer dollars for a fax mailer which glosses over the facts. For example, the Multi-Way Boulevard and the Main Street enhancement, which consume over, I think, 67% of the bond money, is at the very bottom of the city's fact sheet. Same with the pro mailer. Why is that? The parks portion, which is less than half of the total cost, is at the top and is what would appeal to the voters. Most people would call that a bait-and-switch game. And nowhere in the city's fact flyer is it mentioned how much each project will cost. I don't understand why the city and city council doesn't want us to know that. I know it is legal to call roads public spaces, but this sure feels like another bait-and-switch tactic. In the frequently asked questions section of the Bothell City website, the cost of each of the projects isn't addressed. Now, when I buy something like a car, I want to know what each little item costs. And most of the people I know do want to know that kind of thing. So shouldn't those costs be the very first item under your frequently asked questions? I would suggest that you remedy this omission as soon as possible by telling Mr. Stowe, or I believe her name is Catherine Jensen, to add this important information. Will you do that? Regarding the park at Bothell Landing, the fact sheet and the city website refer to a new bridge to the Sammamish River Trail. But I've heard conflicting things about it. What I had heard was that the portion of the bond for the Bothell Landing only applies to 2 parking lots and a water feature, and that the park won't be complete, although the information put out by the pro side and the city website implies that it will. So for clarification, I'd like to know if the bridge is part of this bond or if the funding will come from grants, etc., as stated in the 2015 Capital Facilities Plan. The question and answer section on the website states, "The timing of the ballot measure reflects the reality of rapidly dwindling land suitable for parks and public spaces." In reality, the timing of the ballot is because a huge portion of our money was spent on an expensive $50 million city hall that's $1,000 a square foot.
You could take 10 seconds to wrap up your comments.
Oh, thank you. That benefits
You have a
very few
problem with
people.
3 minutes you're allocated?
City
Every
employees.
citizen is
Excuse me.
allocated the same 3 minutes.
Well, Sandy Gwynn got longer. So I'll repeat myself. It was spent on a hugely expensive $50 million city hall, which is $1,000 a square foot, that benefits very few people, city employees and developers.
Okay, that's the allocation of your time. Thank you so much. Any other
I just have
comments?
one more sentence. I'm sure you'll allow me to do that, Mr. Freed. This took away money that could have been used for the projects in this bond. If this were truly a parks bond, which is what is implied in all your information, I would be behind it, but it's not. The parks portion is the fluff to get us to vote for it. Thank you.
Absolutely. That was a run-on sentence. Any other further comments from the public? We're welcome to have it. We do give everybody the allocated time of 3 minutes. I announced at the beginning of our time that we have that ability to do so, and we certainly like when people come forward. Sir, if you come forward, state your name for the record. Welcome.
Where do I?
Just right there at the microphone.
Yeah, so my name is Thomas Monahan from Troop 420 of the Boy Scout Troop. And we have our meetings at Bothell United Methodist Church, and we're looking for a service project for Bothell. Do you have any suggestions?
We have many, many opportunities, and you might get each council member up here to ask for your services. Thank you so much for coming forward this evening. Yeah, for sure, to contribute. If you just wait for 1 second, we might have an idea over here from Councilmember Sandberg.
Okay.
So I also have a son in a Boy Scout troop, and it's Boy Scout Troop 573. And I believe we are getting together a service project to do service in one of our city parks. So if your troop is interested, I think you or maybe a patrol leader can send an email, and I can give you the name. But in our Parks Department, and I think they can hook you up with some service projects, because I know we could use a lot of help in making our parks even more beautiful than they already are. Does that sound like something you'd be interested in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other suggestions?
Councilmember Evans?
Why is that funny?
Sure.
Okay.
Are we dueling here?
No, I'm adding to
Okay, because I'm going to
what-
come up with a better suggestion now.
I was going to say that you could certainly contact the Parks Department, because I think they do have a lot of good projects, but also Public Works Department, who takes care of all of our streets and utilities and things. They may have some service projects that you could help with, too. So there's various departments in the city that you could contact and ask if there's any service projects. So it's not just parks, which I'm an advocate of parks, so I support that. But there are other departments in the city, too, that may have service projects. And maybe the best thing to do would be to talk to this guy right here after the meeting, the assistant city manager, and he can line you up with some departments or people who will have service projects, and then you guys can choose what you would like to do. How's that?
Okay.
Great.
Sir, thank you so much for your leadership. Your type of leadership coming forward to see how you can serve in the city is an example we can all follow. Thank you. Anybody else from the public who wishes to address council this evening? Seeing no further, thank you everyone for coming out. We have some more exciting items on the agenda tonight. So first we need to address our consent agenda. I pulled one item, 14-159, which will be considered in the future, and then Councilmember Sandberg pulled 14-156. So there's a motion to pass the consent.
So moved with those two items accepted.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lamb, second by Councilmember Agnew. If everybody could place their vote. Clerk can display. Passes unanimous with Councilmember Spivey absent and excused. The next item on our agenda is AB 14-161 to consider an interlocal agreement with participation with East Metro Training Group. Oh, yeah. Sorry, the one you pulled. kind of chatted right over that. Before we jump to that, Councilmember Sandberg, do you want to speak to 156?
Yes. Thank you. So I had the opportunity to speak with Pat Parkhurst, and I appreciate that she responded to all my questions via email that was provided for all of us. I again just wanted a little bit of clarification on what this annual use fee is that we pay. So the way I understand it, and Pat can come up and explain that King County owns the 2 tracks in the business park. One is the site of Madrazo Park that we want to develop, and the other one is the site of the facilities, the Brightwater facilities. And so King County pays a user fee and a stormwater fee a user fee to the business park and a stormwater fee to
King County.
King County. They pay it to themselves. And so I guess I wanted to know how our 6,500 comes about, because if it's like just based on square footage of the 2 lots, to me it doesn't seem all that fair that we pay our portion of the user fee based on the square footage of our lot when we're providing all of these park services, and King County has got a big stormwater facility on the other side. So I was just kind of wondering if there was room to reduce that annual fee, or if we just need to accept the agreement as is.
So I may have confused the issue. The county does own 2 parcels in the business park, and they are lots versus the sports fields that are considered tracks. So if you have a lot that's developed, you pay to the business park, you pay dues to the business park. It's like a homeowners association, only it's for the business park. It pays for the maintenance of the islands and the landscaping and that type of stuff. And they have a property manager who works with them. So our share, so the county owns 2 of our parcels. Our share is only the share for the parcel where the storage tank is that we're going to be working, not where the portal is on the other corner. So it's these are estimates, but it's to be our proportionate share based on the amount of square footage that we're going to use of the property. So if it's 50% of the property is the city's park on top, and the other 50% of the above ground services is the county's, will pay for our share. The stormwater utility, it's actually paid as part of your property tax, and some of that comes back to the city of Bothell for our stormwater. So that's for any of the impervious surface that's covered will be computed, and until we build the park, we don't know what our share will be of that exactly. So I looked at what the county was paying, and we just took half of that as our estimate as to what it will cost us in the future. But until the park's developed, we don't have a good number for that.
Okay, thanks. I guess it is what it is. I mean, $6,500 a year isn't a lot. It's more than I'm used to paying, especially since we're providing a service to the community. But I've already expressed my concern about having to pay this user fee just based on square footage. But I guess I will move approval of the recommended item.
Second.
It's like stereo. I'll take the second from Lamb. So motion by Councilmember Sandberg, second by Councilmember Lamb. Any further discussion?
I'd like to speak to the motion if I could. So this is a really exciting project, and it's one that, Pat, I want to say thank you for the work that you've done. This has been a long time in coming, but it's taking funds that were secured as mitigation from the Brightwater project, and this park is going to be a great amenity for our citizens. Something that is, I think, almost even more significant than the offerings of the individual park is it's going to be named for First Lieutenant Nicholas Madrazo, who was a great citizen of Bothell, just a great guy, somebody who was loved in this community, who gave his life in service of his country in Afghanistan. His parents were moved by his passing to create something called the Names Foundation, which has a 5K run, which my family and I have been fortunate enough to participate in the last several years. And what the NamUs Foundation does is it provides packages for family members of calling cards and amenities that troops who are serving abroad can use to reach their families and loved ones back here in the United States. It's an amazing foundation inspired by the life of a really amazing and remarkable young man, and I can't think of a more fitting way to honor his family and to honor his memory than by moving this park forward, and I'm looking forward to the dedication and the approval of this agreement. So Pat, thanks so much for your work and for your help for everyone in Bothell, but particularly for the Medroza family as they seek to honor their son.
Councilmember Sandberg.
I'd like to echo that. Thank you very much for all your hard work. I didn't want you to think that asking questions would suggest any lack of support, because I agree that this is going to be a great service to our community, providing these park benefits, and it's also a great way to memorialize Lieutenant Madrazo. So I do support this.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? No, seeing no further comment, this would be a vote to pass AB 14156 to authorize the city manager to enter into a surface use agreement with King County regarding the First Lieutenant Nicholas Madraza Memorial Park in substantially the same form as presented. If everybody could place their vote, and if the clerk can display, passes unanimously. I'm sure Deputy Mayor Spivey would have been in support as well, but he is absent and excused. Next item on our agenda this evening is AB 14161 to consider an interlocal agreement for participation with East Metro Training Group. I believe Deputy Chief, Roki, there you are. You are here for the presentation. Nice to see you, Chief.
Good evening. Nice to see you. Tonight we'd like City Council to consider allowing Bothell Fire and EMS to join East Metro Training Group. This is an interlocal contract. It's a training contract. We are already participating as somewhat of a member in the East Metro Training Group. What this training group does is it brings all of the agencies in Zone 1, or the vast majority of them, from Mercer Island all the way to Shoreline, together for us to do inter-department training, which really helps when you're looking at our large volume calls, our high incident calls, that as a zone that we all respond together and work on, whether it's a structure fire in Bothell or a building collapse in Bellevue. The entire zone works together with automatic aid and those type of arrangements. So this is a very helpful thing for not only Bothell, but for all of the citizens throughout the area, and would like your consideration in accepting this interlocal agreement.
Great, thank you. Did Council have questions for Jim? No?
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Agnew and a second by Councilmember Lamb. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, if everybody could place their vote. That's a motion by Councilmember Agnew, second by Councilmember Lamb on AB 14161. The recommended action is staff recommends City Council authorize the city manager to sign the interlocal agreement for the purpose of cooperative and coordinating training activities and administration. Everybody place their vote, and the clerk can display. Passes unanimously. Deputy Chief, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
That was easy. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is AB 14162. Jennifer, thank you for joining us this evening. This is a consider approval of a resolution approving the City of Bothell Hazard Mitigation Plan annexed to the King County Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Well, as the first potential weather system of the season approaches us tonight, I'm actually here to talk to you guys about mitigation. Mitigation is a sustained action taken to reduce or eliminate long-term risks to life and property. And that's really what this plan is all about, identifying and mitigating those risks. So as not to take up too much of your time tonight, I'm here to briefly explain to you the purpose of the Hazard Mitigation Plan. At its simplest, it's to provide guidance and serve as a foundation for hazard mitigation regionally, but more importantly for the City of Bothell. Our annex, which is part of the regional plan, identifies our critical facilities, it identifies current and proposed mitigation initiatives, and it identifies goals for our community that will reduce injury and damage from natural hazards. While federal law actually requires a city to develop a plan, the plan also helps the city prepare, meaning that we stay in a proactive versus a reactive state. It is a key element in emergency management, and it provides for sustainability, helps set the course for response and recovery to impacts from disasters, and it ensures that the city is eligible to obtain disaster assistance. While the plan most recently was a standalone plan, the preferred format requested by FEMA is actually for a multi-jurisdictional regional plan. For this reason, Bothell is part of that larger plan, and we now have our own annex in the regional plan. The regional plan consists of a 54-member planning partnership across King County, and it actually includes cities like Bothell that cross county lines. The regional plan identifies and creates those partnerships and helps make sure that everyone works together. Just a note, this plan has been approved by the state. It has not been formally adopted by FEMA yet. This is typical. It happens a lot with a lot of these plans since they're quite lengthy. So while I'm coming to you for asking for adoption for this plan tonight, already 15 agencies have formally adopted the plan. Another 9 agencies have it on their council schedules, and only 3 of the entire 54 are waiting for FEMA approval. So the only thing that would happen is if FEMA came back with substantial changes, we might have to re-adopt it. Highly unlikely. In all the years that I've been doing this, we've never had that happen. So if you have any plans, I'd be happy to address them to the best of my abilities.
Ms. Warmke, thank you so much. Any questions? We have a motion by Councilmember Agnew and a second by Councilmember Lamb. Any discussion? Councilmember Evans.
Thank you for your presentation, and I just want the residents to know that this is just another example. We just had an example of a joint fire training organization or operation where we train with other agencies, and here we're doing hazard mitigation with other agencies. We do a lot of joint partnerships that are a real benefit to the residents of Bothell, and so I appreciate you bringing this to us. I think this is important that we do these joint operations and planning, and I think it's very helpful for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great. I see no further comment on council. So if everybody could place their vote for the recommended action, which is to adopt the proposed resolution to approve the City of Bothell Hazard Mitigation Plan Annex to the King County Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. And if the clerk almost could display, passes unanimously with Councilmember Spivey absent and excused. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is, from the looks of it, probably our main event of the evening, which is AB 14163, and it's a continued public hearing on potential planning code amendments concerning the Bothell connector alignment between 228th and 240th Street Southeast, and land use designations and development regulations for portions of the Fitzgerald 35th Southeast and Canyon Creek 39th Southeast sub-areas, and consideration of proposed findings, conclusions, and action on a proposed ordinance approving the amendments. Gary. Mr. Hassler, nice to see you this evening.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, members of the public.
Just one sec. The public hearing is officially open.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not Bruce Blackburn. I know you're expecting Bruce this evening. Bruce has unfortunately been taken ill, so Bill and I are going to try and tag this team together and move it forward.
Excellent.
I'm not going to repeat the title of this because it's lengthy and the mayor's already stated it, so I'll get on with my presentation. This was before you in July as a study session, and then again in September 16th, I believe, for your public hearing opening. So I'll try and keep my presentation brief and summarize what's been done to date and what the issues are before you tonight. These proposed plan and code amendments address essentially 2 issues. The first is reassessment of the proposed 39th Avenue Southeast alignment of what's known as the Bothell Connector, which is a planned roadway connecting 240th Street Southeast with 228th Street. In view of escalating costs and environmental impacts of the proposed facility, and secondly, regarding concerns over property owners who have stated that developers have not pursued development of property subject to the low-impact development overlay regulations within the Fitzgerald 35th Southeast and Canyon Creek 39th Southeast subareas due to their complexity and difficulty of implementation. I have a number of exhibits to enter into the record tonight. Council should have received all of these electronically. 2 of them were rather large, so we made those available on our FTP site for you. If you haven't received them, please let us know. In addition, hard copies are available to anyone who would like to see them, and they can simply contact Community Development. The exhibits include comments from Carolyn and Tim Tobin, an email dated October 19th, comments from Elaine Crawford, an email dated October 20th, comments from Andrea Perry in a letter dated October 20th, and comments from Jim Fries in a letter dated October 20th. In addition, late this evening, I received a letter from a gentleman by the name of Orley Johnson regarding this item. We will enter those into the record also. We received these after 5 o'clock, so I don't have copies for everyone, but we'll make sure that you receive them electronically tomorrow, and they'll be available to anyone in the public who would like to see them as well.
Great, thanks, Gary.
The additional exhibits that we've been requested to provide tonight include the North Creek Fish and Wildlife Critical Habitat Protection Area, or the Nick Fuchapa study that was done in October of 2006, the Litowitz test document that was prepared in July of 2004 for the city regarding this sub-area, these two sub-areas, and the final environmental impact statement, or the FEIS, for the Bothell Connector that's dated November 2006. You'll notice that I haven't given you exhibit numbers for any of these items. In Bruce's absence, I didn't want to assign numbers to these, not knowing whether or not he had other items that he hadn't numbered yet, that these might run out of sequence. So we will do that when I connect with Bruce tomorrow or the following day, and provide you with an updated exhibit list at the earliest opportunity. I'm going to come back to this in just a second. This is the Bothell Connector reassignment of the minor arterial, and as council is aware, the proposal is to, this is not working apparently, but switch the minor arterial designation from 39th Avenue to 35th Avenue Southeast. The council direction, to summarize council direction from the September 16th public hearing, I'll go over these bullets fairly quickly. Council direction was to reassign the Bothell Connector from the planned alignment of 39th Avenue Southeast, as depicted in the previous diagram that I showed you, which is transportation element figure TR2, to a new alignment of 35th Avenue Southeast, as depicted in the revised figure TR2. To implement a 40% forest cover retention / creation standard within lands designated R5400A LID, and a 50% forest cover retention / creation standard within lands designated R9600 LID and R40000 LID. To require application of the 2012 Department of Ecology Stormwater Manual. To make a number of technical revisions to the proposed site and building design standards to address issues identified during public testimony, and those are covered in your staff report, and to revise the staff proposed forest cover dimensional standards to make these standards easier to understand and to encourage combining forest areas. And finally, staff has prepared an ordinance and council findings, conclusions, and actions, and proposed sub-area plan and code language which implement the above. Regarding the Bothell Connector 35th Southeast alignment, this shows in more detail the abandoned 39th Avenue Southeast alignment. There we go, which is the white dash line, and moving that designation to 35th, as well as improvements to 240th Street Southeast and 228th Street Southeast, and intersection improvements at various intersections. Regarding the building and site design standards, during public testimony on September 16th, a developer stated that proposed amendments to the site and building design standards did not provide for common construction practices upon sloped properties and did not consider actual site conditions. In response to that, staff proposes a number of revisions. Firstly, to recognize the existing physical conditions of a site and to permit deviation from the site and building design provisions where the presence of critical areas, their buffers, and other regulatory or physical factors make achieving those standards infeasible. And again, there is language in the proposed code language in Attachment 6 that details that. Regarding the forest cover provisions, staff proposes language that, one, would state that it is preferable to locate forest areas within a single area but 2, allow forest areas to be split into distinct locations where appropriate to take advantage of infiltrative type soils and or the location of existing mature trees and to achieve other types of low-impact development benefits. Further, staff proposes revisions to the forest area dimension provisions to match the minimum buffer width established in the critical areas regulations. This is because forest areas are allowed to include critical areas and associated buffers, and it is foreseeable that the critical area buffer may also be the forest area. So we've tried to match those dimensional standards. Staff recommendations tonight are to accept testimony, deliberate, and our recommendation, considering the very large documents that have been entered as exhibits, particularly the Nick Fuchapa study, the Litowitz study, and the final EIS for the Bothell Connector, staff's recommendation would be to continue the public hearing to November 18th of this year. That would allow council and members of the public time to read and digest those documents. With that, I would be glad to try and answer any questions council might have. Thank you.
Great. Gary, thank you so much. I really appreciate your input. And you and Bill and Bruce have all done a tremendous job in putting a lot of details together. I agree with how the conversation should go this evening. What I'd like probably to do is we go to public comment first. The council has an opportunity to ask questions. And then I think we do take a motion to extend until November 18th to extend the public hearing. Bruce, it would be nice if he is here, and of course, I think the more input we have the public from this matter would be a good thing to do. So it's a good suggestion. So first, I think we'll ask the public to come up, Gary, if that's all right with you.
Absolutely.
Great. So I have the first sign up here, which is Marilyn Knutson. We have your address.
Yes, my address is 18421 80th Avenue Northeast in Kenmore.
Wonderful. If you wouldn't mind, unless you're going to hand something to the clerk. Oh, perfect. Okay. And as before, we will have the timer, a 3-minute timer, and I appreciate you coming this evening to address council on this matter.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
My name is Marilyn Knutson, as I already stated, and I represent the Snow King Watershed Council. We're a group of citizens who are concerned with protecting our streams and watersheds, and we work very hard at trying to balance those things with people's requirements. And I am here specifically about AB 14163, proposed policy and code changes to an area known as the North Creek Fish and Wildlife Critical Habitat Protection Area. It is a long name. In this area, the City of Bothell has done a remarkable job of protecting and preserving critical fish and wildlife habitat along North Creek, an important creek to regional salmon recovery processes. This has been achieved because the City of Bothell commissioned scientific studies to characterize the area and identify necessary protections and enacted these provisions. Now the city is considering rolling back some of those protections and has asked developers what they would like to see in the new regulations to make properties easier to develop. These new regulations do not have any scientific analysis to show that they will adequately protect the area. We commend the city's decision for early adoption of Ecology Stormwater Management Manual for Western Washington 2012 edition and its decision not to proceed with the 39th Avenue extension. Both of these decisions will help reduce impacts to wetlands and forest cover critical to North Creek and help protect endangered species such as Chinook salmon. However, the proposed policy and code changes include reducing forest cover, allowing increased excavation of soils and ground disturbance, including in areas with the water table at or near ground level during dry periods, eliminating standards for maximum impervious surface on a lot, changing language concerning protections from require to encourage. All of these will likely have an adverse effect on groundwater, streams, wetlands, and fish and wildlife habitat. These changes do not meet the best available science analysis criteria set forth by the Growth Management Act. It is purely a technical argument to state that these regulations affecting critical areas are not critical areas regulations and thus not subject to the same requirements. This is not the appropriate area to try to promote more development. The City of Bothell should maintain the protections it carefully and correctly put in place. Thank you for your consideration.
Would you entertain a question?
Certainly.
Councilmember Lamb?
Thank you so much for coming tonight. I appreciate your comments, and I just had two questions for you. The first is, you mentioned in your testimony that you felt the 39th connector, not having the 39th connector, was an important thing for the environment. Can you tell us why that is?
It runs through this sensitive area of the place with the very long name.
Nick Fuchapa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas 35th is further to the west.
Okay, so your group is supportive of that decision not
Yes.
to? Okay. And then the second question I had is you had referenced, or you commended the city of Bothell for our work on salmon retention. Do you know what the presence of salmon was in 2006 in North Creek versus today?
I don't. I wish I did.
Do you know if it's higher or lower?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
Okay.
There are people in our group that do salmon counts, but I'm not one of them.
Okay, thank you very much for
Thank
coming out
you.
tonight. I appreciate that.
Any further questions? No. Is it fair to say that is one of the most beautiful scarves I've ever seen?
Thank you very much.
I love the color pink.
Thank you.
Beautiful. So next on the list is Andrea Perry. Madam, if you come forward. Andrea, it's been a while. Welcome back. We have your address.
Thank you. My address is P.O. Box 265 in Anacortes, and my name is Andrea Perry. I'm sure you already have said that, but I was doing some last-minute talking there. Anyway, it's good to be back, and I know I don't live here anymore, but tonight is a subject that is still very near and dear to me. I care about this community, even though I live in Anacortes. I have a lot of fond memories of my 2.5 decades here in Bothell. And part of that is being on the City Council, Bothell City Council, starting in 2004. So I was a part of that group that went through the comprehensive plan, many, many hours, many long days, and even nights and weekends. We worked on it. We had to do it. We had to get it done by a certain amount of time, and we committed to doing that, and it took a lot of effort. I'm glad we went through it. We came up with a very good plan. We went on in 2005 to go through the critical areas ordinance and updated all of that information. And then I was also part of the council when we worked on the LID in 2006 and 2007. So I'm here tonight because I have had an opportunity to read the packet, and I'm asking council to please not vote for this ordinance to change the language in the comp plan or the code amendments for the Fitzgerald 35th Southeast and Canyon Creek 39th Southeast subareas. The reason why is that this is really the impacts on this area will be irreversible. You will lose this very, very critical area. You will never get it back again if you go into higher density development in this area. I want to call to your attention one statement from the 2004 City of Bothell Streams and Riparian Area Study. Portions of the North Creek contain substantial blocks of currently intact habitat that can and do provide many of the most important functions of riparian corridors. And the most significant block of this type is likely in the Fitzgerald subarea between Southeast 228th Street and Southeast 240th Street. The highest levels of protection should be afforded to these areas. That is from one of the scientific studies that we had commissioned when we went forward to figure out exactly what we should be doing to protect this very critical area. It was one of several reports. We not only had studies done, we also had another parametric report to review all of the data and work with council. And we actually had an expert come in and work with council and help us to craft the code to enact all of the recommendations that we were given from the studies to protect this area. And one of the things that we did when in 2007, when there was a request from the property owners, is that 3 minutes, really?
Amazingly. It's amazing how quick it goes by.
Well,
if you could just wrap it up, that'd be great, Andrea. Thank you.
I'll try to. All I'm going to do is say this. We spent months and years to come up with this plan, and it's working. Now, in a series of just a month, you're making some major changes that's going to have a devastating impact on the critical areas. And I ask you to, yes, simplify if you can, but do not rip out these ordinances. They're very much needed to protect that area. So I hope you read my letter, and if you haven't had a chance to yet, please do so. Thank you very much.
I think you have a question. Councilmember Sandberg?
You were about ready to reference the parametric study.
The parametric study, yes.
So you said that the consultant from Parametrics worked with council and staff to draft these regulations?
Yes, he actually came in for many meetings, and we sat for many nights and worked on the code together. So we didn't get the information from the expert and put it together. We worked with him, and he helped us to craft the code so that it worked and so that we felt like we were doing the very best job that we could. And from what I've seen from the agenda packet this time through, I don't know where these numbers are coming from. There's no talk about you've met with anybody, that you've hired anybody to really go through this and understand it. It looks like it's just, to me, you've just gutted. In the recommendations, the staff has just gutted the ordinances, and there is no real reason for it. And that's a concern for me. I know consultants are expensive. I know it takes time and effort. But for an issue as important as this, you absolutely need to take the time and do the job right and listen to not just developers and property owners, but many of the citizens who all of a sudden are finding out what you're doing. And I believe that you have received some expert testimony today in your emails that I would ask that you take a chance to review.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yep, one more question.
I had one. Welcome back, Andrea.
Thank you very much.
I had a question. I didn't see anything in your letter about the 39th connector. And I wondered, because honestly, that's probably one of the biggest impacts to this area. It would blast through a Class 1, Type 1 critical area, which is right through the headwaters of the stream that feeds that. And I didn't see any mention of that in your letter, so I was curious, what's your position on that?
Yeah,
there's two actions that are contemplated here.
I understand that, and I thought, for my purposes, I was going to focus on what little time I had. I would focus on this.
Well, I'm affording you more time to focus on the other.
Well, I will say, because I think you're probably the only other council member that was up there when we discussed this. It was a really hard decision, and I'm not sure that we made the right decision back when we voted to have the 39th Street connector. It's one of those where it's hard to make the right decision on this. I think that the traffic impacts that they felt that were coming through, the staff did a very good job of taking us through that and explaining that they had to do something, and that seemed like the safest route. And so it got to the point of, is it the critical areas or the safety? And we finally fell on the side of safety. But I'm telling you, that was one of the toughest decisions I ever had to make, and I am not sure what I would do on that now. It wasn't my favorite. I never was really happy with that. I don't know if you have actually done a good job of working with Snohomish County and figuring out if they're still planning on having the 39th Street connector going through. I don't understand it, but I do know this. One of the reasons why we zoned that area 5400 attached LID was because of the impacts of the 39th Street connector. We felt on the council that that really did have an impact to those property owners, and so even though they were asking for 9600, the council majority decided that 5400 attached was the right way to go, only with the low impact development regulations attached, because they did not want density along there. They wanted good development. And so for that reason, even though I didn't agree with the 5400 attached, I have done a little bit more studying on it now, and I actually think that that was not the wrong decision, except I was afraid what is happening tonight is exactly what was going to happen, that you would forget that the LID was a very strong part of that. Now you want to take those restrictions out and just let the high-density development in, and it doesn't make sense.
Thank you for your candor. I guess it goes without saying that I don't think we're forgetting anything, but I appreciate you coming here tonight, and I appreciate your concern for our community.
Thank you.
Next person on the sign-up sheet is Ann Agar. We have your address. And when the young Boy Scout came forward, I almost asked you to stand up because you probably know of a few projects in the city of Bothell for a Boy Scout troop to work on.
Absolutely. We have a scout troop that meets in our church also, and they do wonderful things.
Yeah. Great to see you. You have 3 minutes, as always.
Ann Agard, and I just handed to the city clerk not only copies of my testimony, but a disc with the attachments that you were also sent, plus 2 more. It also includes this Cleve Steward report. It's actually done in 3 sections, and a report by Chris May on the effects of urbanization on Puget Sound lowland streams. And I also handed in a copy of my DNS response, which was given on the 15th of October, and I did not receive an acknowledgement of it from the city, so I put it in the record to make sure it was there.
Okay, thank you.
As the council is aware, the Growth Management Act requires cities such as Bothell to designate and protect critical areas and substantively consider best available science. In addition, cities are required to give special consideration to conservation or protection measures necessary to preserve or enhance anadromous fisheries. The current proposal from 10/21/2014 has done no analysis of the changes which result in reductions in forest land cover, increased impervious surface coverage, lack of restrictions on soil disturbance, deletion of requirements that development activities which may affect groundwater, minimize changes or pre-existing ground elevations, and the prohibition of intrusion into that part of the groundwater table which experiences saturated soil conditions as measured in the dry season. No best available science and no analysis. The effects of watershed urbanization on streams is very well documented by Booth in the year 2000, by Arnold, and by Chris May, and a copy of their charts showing this continuous rather than a threshold fashion of the effects of urbanization on streams is in my attachment. In addition, May recommends that resource managers should concentrate on preserving the high-quality stream systems through land use controls, enhancement, and mitigation effects, and that should be focused on watersheds while ecological function is impaired, but not entirely lost. And the North Creek, Coal, Palm Creek watersheds and the 2 unnamed tributary streams are Bothell's highest quality spawning habitat, where ecological function is impaired but not lost, and which deserves preservation.
If you could just take 30 seconds to wrap up, that'd be great.
Okay. The staff's GIS data indicates that 8% of the forested cover in the Coal Creek watershed is the appropriate amount. It is achievable to reach 50%. I request that the council not adopt these 10/21/2014 ordinance for amendments to the Fitzgerald Southeast Plan. I can also respond to Councilman Mark Lamb's request regarding the salmon counts, if you would like that information.
Absolutely, thank you.
I have 2 other questions as well.
Sure enough.
The first one is the 39th connector. I didn't see anything in your testimony or in your writing on that, on what your position is on the 39th connector.
I have not commented on the 39th connector, and I choose not to do so because I'm quite torn between that issue, just as Councilman Perry indicated. On the one hand, it is highly destructive to the wetlands, and one of the reasons that the fish and wildlife corridors were proposed was actually because of that connector, because Steve Morikawa had written a memo talking about the wildlife corridor, not the fish, the wildlife corridor, and there was an attempt to try to keep that over the 39th connector. Okay?
That's fair enough, and I appreciate your candor on that. The second question I had is, can you tell me what other cities in King County or Snohomish County have an analogous situation to the NIC-Fuchapa, where you have a stormwater regulations on top of it, you have critical area regulations, and then you have an additional layer of environmental regulations placed on top of an area within the city limits? Are you aware of any?
Well, the first response is, am I aware of there other areas that are similar to this North Creek watershed and this hydrological regime? And in the Puget Sound lowland area, I am sure there are others, but I am not personally aware of them.
Okay.
Then the next question you had, I didn't hear all of what you said. So
I apologize. Sure. The next question was, are you aware of any other municipalities in either King or Snohomish County that had an overlay of regulations on top of this, whether it be in another jurisdiction similar to the NIC-Fuchapa? Because as we understand this area, we have all of our stormwater regulations, we have all of our critical area regulations, and then in addition to those regulations, there's an additional layer placed on top of that solely for this one part of our city. And I was wondering if you had other areas that you could point us to.
The only thing I know, and I have not reviewed this recently, so...
I didn't warn you I was going to ask that, so that's totally fair.
I believe that King County, but I'm not sure, I believe that King County did a similar forest retention on part of their rural areas.
And I was thinking of another municipality in an urban area.
I was viewing unincorporated King County in the same genre as another municipality, only because they adopted at the time some very forward-looking regulations for their rural areas and their preservation of streams. But I reviewed it at one time many years ago when they did the critical area sites, but I have not recently.
Thank you again. Thanks for your time and thanks for your answer. I appreciate it.
You want the answer to your fish count?
I do.
Okay.
I ask because I want to know.
Okay, I am a salmon watcher, and I've been counting salmon out on the North Creek for I think over 15 years. And I cannot give you the exact counts, but you can go to the website. They are recorded every year, and they do I believe they do a continuous recording, and you can pick up the numbers. But I have to stress to you that these are whole groups of citizens that are out there doing the counts, and so it is not as if it is an official fish count from the Department of Fish and Wildlife. So it is simply, we are trained, we go through a training, we know how to identify fish, and it's actually a most wonderful experience. I will tell you about
what is that website name, just for myself and for people who might be following it?
I'll have to get it to you.
Oh, okay.
Fair enough. I file now. We do all of the electronic filing, so I can get it to you.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
But now, about 4 years, there was a huge fish run in Sockeye where we were going out and seeing. I watch right at the wooden bridge right there at 195th, and then I go up and I count on North Creek Parkway. There's a bridge over there. And I was seeing 40 sockeye going through there routinely about this time in October, the largest numbers I've ever seen. And at the same time, the Chinook runs were actually amazing. There were four, which is when I hadn't seen it in a number of years, 4 huge Chinook coming through. It was actually quite exciting. This year, last year I think we were running, I can't remember. But this year, it's not bad, but it isn't up to that 40.
Okay.
But they do tend to vary in about a 4 to 6 year cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So this year, there were 9 out there last Friday. 7 when I was out yesterday, and I'll be out again tomorrow.
Great.
And those were sockeye, and I've seen one dead Chinook so far.
I'm sorry for that, Chinook, but thank you for your watching, and thanks for your update.
It's really great.
It happens. Next on the sign-up sheet is Tina Williams. Tina, we have your address.
Hi, I'm a property owner on 35th. In the last meeting, I came forward and brought some questions, and most of them were addressed. I'd like to note that my other questions that were emailed to Bruce on September 19th have not been addressed, and they've not been replied to after numerous reminders. I'm trying to be pleasant just to gain information.
Yeah, he's got I don't know if I want to say, he has an illness, and he's been out of the office for some time. So it could be that.
I'd like to address my concerns, and maybe they're ones that people have already said. I'm a new property owner, so maybe I just don't know of them. But I tried to review all the 449 pages of the document and pull out all the information I could. So my first question was the quoted $80 million to fix this problem that we're having. I couldn't figure out if it was only for the south segment or if it was the entire bit of 39th that was supposed to be Bothel's responsibility and Snohomish County responsibility. Everyone keeps quoting that the 35th detour is a wonderful solution. It'll only cost us 40 to 50 million instead. But I feel that if that 80 million was for both sides of the road, north of 228th and south, then that might be part of the solution as well. We haven't really broken it apart like that. I wasn't for sure why the Bothell residents, and this is on a personal side, why we have to fix the problem that all those developments in Snohomish County, are forcing our privacy. I feel like my quiet home on 35th is now in jeopardy of losing part of my land. I read through that document. Section 2.3.4 states a 3-lane road is not a good solution in the area west of 39th, but yet that's the plan that everyone keeps pushing to save money to move it over to 35th. There are no written details of how much land will be needed for the homeowners, but yet the price has somehow been totaled, and I didn't see how those numbers came about. Figure 3.2 to 3.6 propose a detention pond on my land. Figure 3.3-1 proposed moving my wetlands as well. In the plan, I don't see anything that it was discussed with the homeowners, but yet there it is on my land. Even though there are just as many or more critical areas west of 39th, you keep bringing it over that 35th is a wonderful solution. I really, really don't feel that it is. The two ladies that spoke before me talked about all the fish and wildlife and this and that. My parcel in particular, well, the 3 that I own with my husband, has a huge amount of wetlands, has the stream, has 2 different streams coming in, and I really would like to be sure that people are aware that we need to protect that and not just move the simple idea of, the problem is money. I don't like the idea of just moving it to 35th to have a cheaper Band-Aid. Figure 3.6.2 talks about population, but those dates are nearly 10 years old. There's no current data that shows the amount of population growth that's been up above the 228th line of the Snohomish County stuff. One more tiny thing. Proposition 1 flyer came in the mail this week, which will equal $42 million over the next 25 years, $9.86 per home. So that would get us the other $40 million if we did something similar to that. And so I just wanted to say, please don't just choose a cheaper solution, because I feel that it is not the right answer to fixing this problem.
Great, thank you. And you've just recently moved to the neighborhood. So welcome to Bothell, where there was a recent article about people putting up signs of new homes and new people moving to the neighborhood and problems. I took that offensively. I'm glad when people move to Bothell, so welcome. Thank you. And I'm not trying to be a voyeur or anything, but I looked up your address on the map, and there's looked like 30 to 40 cars, which I understand were quite something for you to have to clean up. Is that right?
We purchased the property from a family estate. They had owned it since 1940. and they were only the second owners of the property. It was first built in 1925. It's a little old house built by the Ross family.
Wow.
The road named after
Cool.
them. So the house had been used just as a rental, and the man that was there was using it kind of as a junkyard. So we've cleared it up. We're doing a full restoration of the 1925 home. We're fully permitted. Thank you very much. And it's coming along, but we really want to keep it a natural state.
Well, what I really love is you talk a talk, but you're also walking it by cleaning up that area. So that's
Thank
pretty
you.
neat. Thank you. You have a question by Councilmember Ram.
Have you had many? I just have one quick question for you.
yes, sorry.
Have you had many conversations with your neighbors on 35th? Because we get quite a bit of testimony from other parts of your area, but not a whole lot of people on 35th.
Well, there aren't that many people on 35th because we are large parcels. We're zoned R40,000, at least on the south part of 35th. And then as you go closer to 228th, that zoning has changed because that's where the borderline is. That new development is technically Snohomish County, I believe. It's kind of notched out. My adjacent neighbors, there's no one living to the south of me, and south of them is Evergreen Church. And I didn't see anything of how it was going to be addressed with Evergreen Church and their parking. As far as how we would widen the road and put a roundabout there. Directly across from me are 3 homes. They're each only on 1 acre. So there's not a lot of population to speak to, but I've spoken to those homeowners, and I'm not sure why they're not present today because I thought they had an opinion as well. You know, they voice it to me. But I haven't heard a lot of people in favor of bringing the street to be widened there. I like the idea of having a sidewalk because my kids get on and off the bus and it's not too safe. There is a lot of traffic that comes down 35th. It's really really heavy. So,
Did you notice in the packet it's estimated to increase 110% from today on 35th if we make those permanent changes?
well, I read the details, but I want to say it wasn't exactly projected out to 2035. It was mentioned at some points, and then there were some spreadsheets that it was maybe listed to 2020 or something like that, if I'm trying to remember correctly.
There was a traffic impact study in 2006, and they redid the analysis for our packet, and it said it was going to be a 25% increase on 35th, and now it'll be 110% increase from existing to 2035.
If you did which proposal? If you brought the road wider on 35th or on 39th?
On your street.
Oh, sure, I would totally believe that.
Okay.
I can't imagine how much worse it's going to get, but it would get worse. I don't know if you heard me say I was kind of fast and nervous, but Section 2.3.4 said right in this report that a 3-lane road is not a good solution. Originally, it was proposed as a 5-lane road on 39th, and then proposed as a 5-lane road as well on 35th. And no one's been talking about that 5-lane proposal. They keep talking about the 3-lane, even though it's quoted that it's not a good solution by someone official. So I don't know why that came about. I guess just to save money.
Well, stick around. We'll have some discussion about that in a little bit.
So I'm sorry. I probably offended somebody. That's just my interpretation of it.
We can handle it. Any other comments, questions? Ms. Williams, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That comes to the end of my sign-up sheet, but I'm sure there's more people that would like to make comment on this item. Ma'am, if you come forward and state your name for the record.
Elaine Crawford, 3333 218th Street, Southeast, Bothell. I only just had one comment. Everybody's talking about the environment, and they're talking about 39th Connector, and I've been kind of probably around since 85 when they originally started the idea of the connector. That was when it was originally called the Cole Quadrant Business Park. And the mitigation for the traffic for that business park was the 39th Connector. And there were 4 alternatives, and eventually the one that we're looking at now was the preferred and has been preferred throughout the years and still is. But apparently it's all funding, and I just wonder if all funding sources have been looked at. But I also wondered if anybody had ever, now that they're looking at opening this up to development, and has anyone looked at the impacts on the environment when you allow development going into that area as compared to the impacts of a road? I guess that's my question. I mean, there should be a cost comparison. I mean, they're going to add a lot of houses, a lot of traffic to the already congested roads that we have. And then they're going to impact those wetlands a lot too. So I think that should be looked at as, you know, the density that they're going to allow as compared to what kind of impacts the road would be.
Great, thank you. Just for clarity for me, I didn't catch your name.
Elaine Crawford.
Perfect, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Sir, if you want to come forward and state your name for the record.
Kai Nelson, 18804 101st Avenue Northeast, Bothell. I want to start by thanking the council and the staff for all of your hard work and dedication over the years in Zone 1. The countless staff hours, council hours, scientists, specialists, expert hours will hopefully come to a conclusion tonight, is what I had written. Apparently November 18th, hopefully. I used to work at the Canyon Park Orchard up on the hill at Tom and Susan Berry's property, and I personally don't see evidence to support the supposed influence that the orchard land has on North Creek. In fact, I've heard from a water expert that the problems start up in Everett, and by the time it hits this area of Bothell, there's hardly any impact. As far as I understand, the negative impact on North Creek began many years ago, way upstream, and cannot be fixed. I came to a council meeting 9 years ago, right about this time, 9, to show my support around these very same topics. And I'm amazed that this is still ongoing. How many years, how much time, how many tests, how many scientific studies, how many surveys, how much public testimony, and how much tax dollars are going to keep, we can't keep doing this. We've got to figure this out. So, I ask that each of you on the council and that everybody in the room who are passionate about this, for or against, to take a step back, look through a lens with an empathetic lens. Please put yourselves in the shoes of the homeowners, like the Berries, who have been struggling with this for almost 18 years. These actions have put people's lives on hold for a significant number of years. To provide for an experiment in zoning that has not proven to work for Zone 1. We're talking about Zone 1, not the entire thing. So for the property owners, this is an absolute hardship that very few people in Bothell have had to endure. Zone 1 families have been expected to shoulder the burden, uncompensated, and have been blocked from being able to move on. So my request to the council is to officially vote to remove the connector. Removing the connector has very positive effects on the environment, which is a big plus and should be considered. I'd like the council to also adopt a set of standards and zoning that will work for the landowners. It is a fact that many of the homeowners in Zone 1 have land that is not forested now. It is dry and good developable ground. I'd like the council to please move on and away from the experimental LID that is not working and modify to something that works. And then please stop spending citizen tax dollars and city resources on untested code that is going nowhere. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your presentation this evening, or comments this evening. Are there further hands? Any people? Mr. Ewing, and then straight to the back. Are you going to read all of that for us this evening?
No, this is just
visual. All right.
Exhibits that I need to submit that I don't want to count against my time. I did also submit email to council and to Bruce Blackburn. Apparently, since Bruce wasn't here, it didn't get into the record. So I'd like to submit that to the clerk now.
Great. We'll start the clock after you get back. Seeing you have an elbow injury.
And before you start the clock, I'm also aware that you received other emails because I got forward copies of them from Dr. David Bain and Suzanne Brunel. So you should check your emails and also get those submitted. They went to Bruce also. They should get submitted into the record as exhibits also. Maybe we should swap this around and you can ask me questions first so that doesn't eat into my 3 minutes if you're going to ask me the questions that I was going to talk about anyway. Or do you want me to just go ahead?
Why don't you just introduce yourself and we'll start.
All right. My name is Patrick Ewing. I served on this Bothell Council for 12 years, especially through 2004, 2005, when I was mayor, the chair of the council, when we spent all those hours in meetings talking about these stacks and stacks of studies. And I was given the credit in the last meeting for those long meetings extending so long, but I think the credit is to all of the council members who like to debate, like to go into detail, and so all of us spent those many hours together working on these code amendments under a deadline to get it done. So I'm also passionate about this issue, that this area is a unique area that needs to be protected because of the impact it has for the cold, cool water in North Creek and to protect that habitat for the salmon. One thing that was talked about by Ms. Perry was the lot size reduction. I'd just like to add the rationale. So Bothell they don't use a unit per acre way of building. They use a lot size, minimum lot size. And so this area used to all be zoned R40,000, which means you get one lot per 40,000 square feet. The problem with that, and why one of the rationale for reducing the lot size, is it's hard with the buffers and the streams in this area to actually get a lot size that big and have a buildable lot. So the rationale was, hey, you can actually achieve a more reasonable yield if you reduce the lot size. But it was never envisioned that it would be actually built out at a density you would see in an unconstrained area that without wetlands and whatnot. That those provisions were still necessary to protect the habitat functions of this area. So the lot size reduction was to allow some flexibility to actually get a reasonable yield on the lots. It wasn't ever envisioned that you'd see the same kind of development you see in the neighboring counties, that same sounding zoning, which is indeed units per acre. So others has talked about the environment. I would like to actually spend my time talking to you about the connector. So here's the studies. Here's the environmental impact study we did. I'm glad now that that has been submitted to the record so all of you up there can go through the same detail and look at the alternatives, pluses and minuses of them, because I agree it was a tough decision. One, the 39th alignment does have pretty big environmental impacts. It had impact on the property owners in that area. So it was a tough decision. What's missing is the coordination element with Snohomish County. We're required under GMA to coordinate between the county and the city. This was a joint project. If you look right here on the cover, it says joint project, Bothell and Snow County. We jointly came to that alignment.
If you could just wrap up your comments, Patrick. Thank you.
Well, all right. So we have not coordinated this. It's still on their comp plan map as that alignment. They're proposing in their comp plan 2015 update to increase the zoning along that alignment to make, if it's not going to be there or we're taking away our half of it, it's not appropriate. So we need to be coordinating with the county. It's required under GMA, and we have not done that yet, according to the conversations I've had with Snohomish County up to this point.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. Councilmember Sandberg.
So you have some other studies underneath the two that you showed us?
Well, all of these, I think, now have been submitted into the record, too. There's the Litowitz test, there's the low-impact development, I've got a whole bunch of exhibits, so I don't know if you want all the exhibits from the 2004 comp plan updates, but...
Not really. But...
My wife keeps begging me to throw this stuff out, but...
You seem happier after not being on council, more relaxed. Councilmember Lamb has a question for you.
Patrick, welcome back. The question I had for you is one, do you support putting the 39th connector through this critical area?
Do I support putting it? Okay, what I do support is finding a reasonable transportation solution.
Okay.
We have to find one that works, and in my opinion, a 3-lane on 35th might not be sufficient. Okay. That's not what the impact statement recommended. It recommended a 5-lane configuration along 35th And before we get rid of that, I'd like to see the analysis that was actually done that says, even though the traffic is going up 135% more than what we thought it was going to be before, now it's okay to go down to 3 lanes when it wasn't back in 2004 when we did this study?
And the second question that I had was, did you vote for the regulations we're talking about?
Did I vote? I voted on it, yes.
Did you vote for it?
For which regulation?
For the Nick Fuchapa regulations. Did you vote for the
which year? I mean, we had a lot of hearings.
When we adopted them. The regulations that you spoke to earlier, did you vote for them?
I don't remember on which day, which way I voted on which part of it. No, I can't answer that.
Okay, thanks.
Great, thank you, Mr. Yang. No further questions. Any further? Yep, and sir, in back. Welcome. You state your name for the record.
My name is Bob Vick. I'm with Sunquest Homes, Phoenix Development. I'd like to comment on a couple of things. The first is, you have my address, right?
If you want to state it again.
16108 Ashway, Linwood, 98087.
We only allow speakers from Bothell, sir, so we'll... Just kidding.
I recognize I office in a different area. With regards to the overall site on the Fitzgerald Hill, by our analysis, just about 40% of it already is wetland and buffer. So you're sitting there with an area that's going to be, of the multitude of acres up there, there's a multitude of acres being set aside right out of the gate for stream buffers, for critical areas and such. The code provisions that the staff has been working so diligently on to try and mitigate a broken ordinance, in our opinion, is a middle ground, granted. What it does do, it preserves road standards that would allow for lesser roads, pervious surfaces, ways to mitigate, surface flows and stormwater, rain gardens, those kind of LID things that come with the DOE 2012 manual. I think you have to give consideration to the effect of that when you're talking about taking away the 20% net impervious that was an ambiguous number. And when you analyze that number, it has different ranges and all kinds of things. I think going to the 2012 manual is a good thing. We've gone through conversations with staff to understand all these nuances ourselves. I don't claim to have 100% understanding of it. I don't think anybody here does. But I would say, just standing here with you right here today, that we could largely support it, and we'd like to get it done. So with regards to the Bothell Connector, I've been around a long time in this area. We're responsible for a lot of the development in Snohomish County that fed into this. We'll admit that, too. I think Lane's sitting there laughing at me. But at the same time, those monies went somewhere. So we have nothing to do with that part of it. All we did was develop the lots. So thank you for the efforts for staff and the city considering these modifications. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vick. Further comments? Oh, sir, you might have a question, Councilmember Rayum.
I just have a quick question, and I might not have heard you right, but I think you said you've done some analysis on effective impervious area for potential projects.
Right. Well, just in the sense of, given the ordinance as we see it now, what kind of density could be achieved on the hill? We've gone that far with it, with the expectation that we'd have buffers from the wetlands, from the stream courses and such on the site.
Can you give me a rough percentage of the effective impervious? I mean, it's obviously not the whole area, but the project that you looked at, how much of that was going to be effective impervious?
If I misspoke to tell you I had a percentage of what would actually be the impervious calc, we don't have that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Evans?
Your analysis of that area, taking into account all the existing wetlands and buffers and those conditions that exist there now, what is a rough estimate of units that you could see?
I was afraid somebody might ask me that.
I said rough, general.
Just in general, I took without considering the 4-lot short plat to the north side there, and without considering there's about 3 or 4 parcels that go right up the center of the site there that we hadn't necessarily included in what would be a prospective development. It was about 118 would be the net density that would be allowed up on the hill. Now, when you put that in perspective, there's been a lot of conversation about the 5400A being the appropriate gift to these neighbors that own the property there. It really is the best type of zone to be able to manipulate where those footprints go on a site that's constrained like this, as opposed to trying to lay out an 80-foot bubble or something across a site like this. That really doesn't work. 5400A allows you to do lots of different types of product mix, which is really logical. Did I answer your question?
Right. About 118, I think you said.
That's a very rough calculation.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want somebody here to use that
Yeah.
for an absolute of anything, because it's an estimate.
Well, we've heard numbers of up to 200 units up there or something. So I was just curious, as a developer, what, in your very preliminary look at the area, what you would think. And that's a general number, realizing that's not a number.
You know the interesting part of it, Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Is the existing code is the most restrictive in all of it. The existing code today, not the I can never pronounce the environmental code. If you take the gross area, less your buffers, less your critical areas, and you do that density calculation, you take out your roads, and with the suggestion that the vault covers can be included back into density, your own code today is the most restrictive. Not the environmental side of it. Just doing the absolute buffers from your wetlands and critical areas is the most restrictive on density. Because at the end of that, once you subtract all those buffers and such, you divide by 5400A, there's your unit count. It's really simple.
Okay.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? Sir, well, come on forward. Ready to go.
Yeah.
You state your name and address for the record, that'd be great.
Dave Watkins. I'm addressed at 210 Fifth Avenue South in Edmonds, so I'm not a Bothell resident, but may I speak?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, the person who preceded me, Mr. Vick, was the person behind all of the interactions with the owners. So I'm speaking more to the owners than all the studies and tests and percentages. I've been there over the last 15 years watching all the property owners negotiate contracts. That's what I do. I'm a broker with Windermere and represented Sunquist even as far back as 2000 with people in Bothell. So some of the 1,500 homes from 212th down to 228th, Bob and I had a hand in negotiating those sales with owners. And those went like they normally do, a little back and forth negotiating and a hope that property would be entitled and closings would happen, and they did. But I have never been around and seen in any municipality, and I've worked in this area for 40 years, from Edmonds over here, the South County area, such a kind of a blocking of efforts from a council to let some people on the hillside move on. And it would appear that over the last 10 years, we had them all under contract with Sunquist, and they all fell apart. Now that, from a personal standpoint, is emotional, is difficult, and at best, a bad experience. I have them again all under contract with KLN Development, Village Life Homes. And again, the deals didn't go together. So a lot of these people in the room know me because I'm the front person that comes out and says, hey, I got an offer on your property, I'm here, we need to talk. They say, what's your story? We give them the price, and Mr. Evans, I've spoken with you and some others too. And it all comes down to, let's see what the city can do. That's the way it is with every development. But I would just plead with you to try, and the person, a couple people before, I forgot his name, said, try to use some common sense in helping these neighbors move on. And it seems like this one hillside is having the biggest struggle. So to that end, I hope that you can all find a practical solution on November 18th that helps those owners experience what every other owner in Bothell that has the opportunity to sell to a developer. Growth we can't stop. Look at downtown. But those that can and want to sell have a chance to sell. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Further comments? Ma'am, if you come forward and state your name for the record.
I'm Joelle Berry. I live at 18804 101st Avenue Northeast, Bothell, 98011. I just wanted to get up and say, my husband Kai already spoke, but I wanted to say that I support getting rid of the 39th connector. It's hung over the Zone 1 property owners for more than 30 years. I think my dad said last month that he was on an advisory board in the 70s, maybe, about it. So I think that should go, and for the obvious environmental benefit that that it will have being gone, and it's obviously lacking feasibility. I'd also like to applaud the efforts toward preservation in this unique area by council and staff. But it seems to me that tonight staff has proposed some middle ground for the development in Zone 1. I support those changes, and I hope that the council will move forward and give the landowners some choices for their land. It's my parents' land, and I'd like to see them be able to make some decisions and not have other people making all their decisions for them. Release them from this weird limbo they've been in for 17 years. So thank you very much for your time.
Appreciate your comments this evening. Further comments? I see a hand in the back, Mr. Berry.
Good evening. Tom Berry, 23305 39th Avenue Southeast. First of all, I want to thank the council and staff for enduring the long journey to hopeful resolution. One of you on council has been here the entire time. When David Sherrard of Parametric surveyed the upland properties of Zone 1, he did so as a professional representative of the city, the first professional that ever came to the property. He was a planner by profession. I believe him to be an honest man in his appraisal. When questioned as we walked down through the long existing apple orchard and what would become to be termed the dry land, I asked about the lack of evidence regarding wetlands critical areas, anything influencing North Creek. He stated that you would have to assume groundwater flow. Past and now currently, we're being told by surface water experts that Zone 1 uplands, the dry land, does not significantly impact North Creek, and noted that the upland properties are not delineated by natural features that signify their influence on a river, but rather a north-south, east-west city line. These and other facts simply won't go away through all of the persistence of the agenda in the face of reality regarding all the properties, all the land, as some of the kind of monotype is treated like some kind of a monotype, which is simply not true. For 20 years, we raised apples and pears on that ground. Apples that received national notoriety for their flavor quality. You don't do that on poor, unsuitable ground, wetlands, or critical areas that contribute. Ask anybody in the business of agriculture. That's not possible. This will always bear on the wonder that I have in light of the supposed influence that this same ground has over a river quite some distance away. What we did for so many years successfully bears facts, and the rest of the agenda regarding the same patch of earth, my earth, well, it's somebody's really good idea. But it doesn't rationally include all of us in Fitzgerald. This is, in fact, not politics. It's about people's lives. Lives put on hold for a significant number of years to provide for an experiment in zoning that has not worked for Zone 1. For the property owners, this is hardship. Hardship for the few among the entire population of Bothell. Zone 1 families who are expected to shoulder the burden, not compensated, enduring the inability to move on in old age. And in our case, the effort to try to save somebody's life with resources tied up in the land. Zone 1 needs to be dealt with in an honest and realistic manner, not some sort of maniacal obsession. We are real people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Anyone else? Mr. Phillips? And then ma'am in the back by the light switch.
Jim Phillips. I'll give you my voting address and where I live. So it's 23223 39th Avenue Southeast, 10025, Northeast 183rd, 10315, East Riverside Drive. The Bothell City Council, Planning Commission, staff have put together a tremendous amount of effort in designing development regulations for the entire city of Bothell. Through many, many public hearings, getting information from developers, getting information from individuals, and many, many, many hours they put together a development regulations that have been utilized throughout the entire city. These regulations protect the environment, they protect the adjacent homeowners, abutting properties through buffers and setbacks and landscaping. The Zone 1 area in the city of Bothell should not be tied to the rest of the Fitzgerald area. It is really a separate area. It is very, very developable. There are a couple of places of wetlands, but our current zoning code takes that into consideration. I mean, honestly, that code, it has withstood challenges. It has withstood the test of time. It does a very good job for developing any parcel of land, and has developed any parcel of land throughout the city of Bothell. One of the things that is really nice and important about our current zoning code is that when the city council or planning commission have staff here and all of a sudden they have a question, staff is extremely knowledgeable about our current zoning code, and there is not an answer that they can't, a question that they can't answer. Someone walks into the building department, whether it's an individual or whether it's a developer, they know that they can get questions answered right then. It's not, well, I will look that up and I'll get back with you. They know that code absolutely forwards and backwards. And it is not an easy code. If you go just north or east of the Zone 1 area, Snohomish County's codes are really lax compared to the city of Bothell. We do the code does a great job, So
thank you.
I'm asking you to really think long and hard about just utilizing the code that we currently have for the Zone 1 area. It is all very developable land. Most of it's either in pasture or an apple orchard that has been let go for a number of reasons.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Good deal. I might contact you. We were contacted, this is off subject, somebody looking to potentially do a rezone on East Riverside Drive, and remember you gave me a wonderful tour through your facility there.
Right.
Thank you for that. So
no problem.
You might hear from me in the next week or two.
All right.
Thanks. Anybody else? One more time. Anyone else want to address council on this matter? Oh, yes, ma'am. Sorry, in the back. Remember you raised your hand. I just didn't see it again. If you would come forward, state your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Virginia Dixon. I live at 23217 39th Avenue Southeast in the Fitzgerald neighborhood. I am a new neighbor. I have just owned the property there with my husband for 2 years. I have two comments, first of all, about the corridor that I have not heard addressed at all. One is that there have been 3 properties that have sold within the last year that I know of, where that corridor would take their land, often go through the houses that are standing there. And these people had no idea that this corridor, proposed corridor, was in place. This is the biggest impact, I believe, in this neighborhood, that there is this kind of thing where the people are not being compensated for a hold on their land, and they are not. I believe some of these parcels of land were sold. It was rather almost a sham to do it without telling these people that this corridor was in place. It was not, to me, very morally sound practice. The other thing is, we're talking about 3 lanes, 5 lanes on 35th and 39th. If you go down to 39th, the part of 39th that runs by Group Health and Home Depot and everything, it is essentially a 2-lane road, one in either direction. That is because we have drip coming down the side of the hill. There are cones there permanently. I have never seen those cones gone. It's essentially a 2-lane road. Why are you addressing anything without fixing that road? It is a 2-lane road. That part of the road is now only servicing 1 lane in each direction. The same problems would exist if you bring it through the Fitzgerald neighborhood. If you do the 39th extension, the hill drips all the time. On 39th, as it is now, which is a very narrow street, there is water there all the time. All this has to be addressed before you can come up with millions and zillions of dollars for another project. I'm sorry. Lastly, I would like to say, as to this neighborhood, I was at a previous meeting in October, and there have been very tearful pleas to rezone this area. I would like to tell you that there has been development in this neighborhood. There are larger houses on big lots. It is my contention that most of these people could sell their property, and if you have 5 acres or more, you could divide it into larger lots for larger homes. Their property can be sold.
You could just wrap up your comments.
I think that's
it?
That's pretty much it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I don't know if that's a red shirt or a pink shirt, but I appreciate everybody wearing pink as of this month of October. We see all the NFL players, but I love when other people come out in the community to support a demon among us, which is cancer. So bless you each who do support that cause. I know we all do, but going out and speaking on that matter is important to me. Anybody else in this matter that would like to address council this evening? All right, seeing none, we're going to take a short 15-minute break. I would like to start promptly at 8:15, and with that, we will be on recess. All right, welcome back, everybody. If we could have... Thank you. Ooh, nice. Underneath. All right, folks in the audience, we're actually going to jump back on this agenda bill item. If you'd like to join us in this conversation, we, of course, invite you to stay. If you would like to take your conversations outside, if you want to continue. Perfect. So, Council, we've had an opportunity to hear from the public, which I thought was very insightful. We have 60 minutes that we've allocated to this. We had a 5-minute presentation. This evening, I'm not going to consider the public comment part of the 60 minutes. So breaking that up between 6 people, we have about 9 minutes left per person. So what I'll do is start with anybody who'd like to jump in.
I'll start off.
Okay, Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have before us kind of 2 different distinct issues, and I'm glad we have an opportunity to talk about these before they come back. I really appreciate the work that staff has done on this, on both the issue of 39th Connector as well as the issue of the in the Fitzgerald sub-area. I was a part of these decisions that were made before, and we did take a lot of time. It's interesting, and I think it's important from a historical perspective to understand where this conversation came from. Originally, this was what was called a growth reserve. So we had a 1 acre zoning. All of these this entire area was zoned 1 acre and 1 house per acre. And then under the Growth Management Act, it was said, was an environmental piece of legislation. It said the idea of stopping sprawl is that urban areas should accommodate, of which Bothell is an urban area, should accommodate growth. They should have people have the opportunity to live in a city so that they don't sprawl out into the countryside, so that we don't see problems with traffic and problems with the environment. So we rezoned a portion of that area because it wasn't lawful to have that area remain 1 house per acre. And under the consideration, we also said, look, there were 2 parts of the city, Norway Hill and the North Creek Habitat area, where they said these are important, have important critical habitat areas. So on top of our critical areas ordinance, and on top of now our stormwater regulations, we put on an additional layer of protection. The additional layer of protection is for much of this area, it remains what's called R40,000, or 1 house per acre. If you go to any other urban area in the Puget Sound, you will not find that zoning designation because it doesn't exist. It's not consistent with state law. But we had actually a majority of the Fitzgerald area kept in 1 house per acre as a means of limiting development, particularly close to North Creek. That's very important to understand, those 3 things, before we even begin the conversation tonight about modifications of the additional regulations. If you don't understand where you're coming from, you have no idea ultimately where you're going to go. And I'm concerned that some of the comments have been narrowed to a point where, it's like, well, if we were to stop on these make any changes whatever to these final regulations, Armageddon would ensue and the whole thing would be lost. That has nothing to do with reality. That has nothing to do with the reality on the ground or what's happened in this area. If you look at something that is zoned 1 house per acre with a 50 or 60% forest retention requirement, that would mean on a perfectly flat 1 acre lot, you would need to plant, that had no trees on it, you would need to create a forest that didn't exist in the hope of attracting wildlife, in the hope of helping North Creek. If this regulation passes, you would, on a perfectly flat 1 acre lot, then have to plant 50% of it as a forest. And your house could be on the remaining half acre that was left over. That's in addition to all of the environmental regulations for our stormwater manual for 2012, all of the environmental regulations that we have in our critical areas ordinance, assuming that there were critical areas anywhere near that site. So it's important to have that conversation, I think, in context when we look at what we're talking about. The scenario of saying that this, any modification to this would be disastrous to the environment simply isn't true. And it isn't borne out by either the science, the facts, or what we see on the ground. Our staff has worked very, very hard to look at a balancing of the environmental impacts and necessary transportation and infrastructure needs. I've read through every piece of email that I got, including some emails from former council members, which I appreciate. There was one in particular that I wanted to call out. I got an email from former council member that said it was not in the interests of the city for this area to develop. That is an extraordinary statement, to say it's not in the interests of the city for this area to develop. That is not the place of the city to say that this area should not develop. These people have a zoning on their land. I live in this area. I live in a subdivision. My house probably used to be a farm or a forest. I'm reminded of some people who are caught in traffic on 405 and they look around them and think, who are all these people who are making me late for my meeting? If we look at growth and development, anybody who lives in a subdivision in the city of Bothell, it used to be a farm, it used to be a forest. To say now that I'm here, I want to pull up the gate, and even though your land designation says you can build a home on it, I want to say that it's not in our interest to have it developed now that I'm in my house, it's an extraordinary statement, and it's not the policy of our city. It's certainly not the policy of our state. We then come to the issue of the 39th connector. This is an extremely personal issue for me, and I appreciate the candor of Ms. Agard and Ms. Perry in saying that they weren't sure how they would decide on that. It's a tough decision. It is a tough decision, and it's one that we don't have the luxury as a council of punting. We have to vote on it. We have to make the decision. And we are faced with probably the single most significant environmental impact to this area would be allowing the 39th connector to blow through a wildlife corridor, a critical area, and a stream. A 5-lane road going through the middle of that area would do more to destroy habitat, would do more to harm the environment than any other tinkering with, a fourth layer of land use regulations we can possibly imagine. If you are concerned about the environment, and you are concerned particularly about the environment in this area, you have to take that into consideration. I appreciated the speaker who came up and said, look, we have a road that is constantly flooded on 39th, on the existing 39th going down there. How on earth are we going to build another 5-lane road through there and guarantee that that doesn't flood? I believe very, very strongly that we are making the right decision if you look at 39th, there's one school of thought that would say, well, if you build 39th, that'll help the traffic. That'll help alleviate traffic. There's another school of thought that would say if you build 39th with all the homes that Snohomish County is allowed to be built above there, that becomes an on-ramp onto the 405. That allows people to freely traverse through that area. It's an alternative to 527, and it's an alternative to Highway 9. You're encouraging more traffic in there. If you have a three-lane road on 35th, there's only so many cars that can hold. I drive that road every single day at least 3 times. And I can tell you that the 39th connector, even if we could afford it, which we can't, even if Snohomish County, in a partnership with Snohomish County was mentioned, that's a funny term when we think about the development that's gone on outside of our borders, and the bank account of zero that they have set aside to fund the 39th connector. There is no partnership, not because the city of Bothell hasn't tried, but because Snohomish County has collected the money from that development and never remitted it to our city. We need to look at what is best for the environment, what is best for transportation, and what is best, honestly, for the people who live in this area, of which I happen to be one. The best thing to do, in my estimation, is not to build the 39th connector, is to have modest roundabouts with sidewalks for the people who live on 35th, to not go more than 3 lanes, and to have a reasonable accommodations made for the 4th layer of environmental protection that I think staff has clearly identified and I think are clearly appropriate. And if I have any time left, I'll reserve the balance.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Or who's next? Councilmember Sandberg?
I had some questions of staff, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, tonight we received some testimony from a resident on 35th that she had seen some figures that had shown detention vaults or potential right-of-way on her property, and she said that was the first she'd heard of it, and what was that? And so I was wondering, what kind of notice are we providing to the homeowners on 35th? I know we sent out a postcard, because the postcard is on the last page of this agenda packet, and it says the council is considering removing the 39th connector, but it doesn't expressly say, and moving that transportation corridor to the 35th Avenue corridor. So can we take this opportunity between now and November to notice those folks that not just that we're thinking about abandoning the 39th corridor, but that we are thinking about using the 35th corridor as an alternate? Because I don't want to be in a situation where we hear, I never heard about that. I mean, we want this is not an easy decision on what to do with the 39th connector, but at least we can fully inform all of the affected people. And it seems like the 35th corridor homeowners, property owners, are going to be significantly affected. So I would like to see noticing to that group. And do I have support on council for such a thing?
I'm certainly fine with that. I think it's probably 8 people, and probably it's a task that's reasonable. Steve?
So I want to make sure I'm clear, because we sent notices out to about 4,000 addresses first time around. Are you talking?
I think they
lane?
actually did send it out. I think the notice went out to the people who live on 35th.
Yeah.
But when you read the notice, it says, and I'll go to the end of the, I mean, if you, if we want to look at what the exact wording is, it just says reassessment and possible removal of the 39th corridor between 240th and 228th. Doesn't say anything about moving that and changing 35th into an arterial. When I hear tonight that a homeowner, a property owner says, I saw pictures and there's all this, proposal on my property, and that's the first time I've heard of it, I feel like we need to do some more noticing of that area.
So I think we can do that. I think we would probably limit it to the properties within the area rather than try to go back out to 4,000.
Yes.
What we did in the past was, we have to understand the Bothell connector was, the last time it was touched was in about 2007. So we took that old mailing list because we didn't want to lose anybody who was on the mailing list, and we tried to merge it with drawing a map and sending it to the new owners as well. And it combined to be very large. If we keep it between 228th and 240th with a little bit above and a little bit below 228th and 240th and a little bit maybe to Fitzgerald,
I think that
and maybe
would
do
be
45th, then I think we can keep it fairly small. We could do
because
that.
what struck me in the agenda report was one of the statements, and I'm sorry I don't have it exactly, the citation in front of me, but the statement was that there will be increased traffic on 35th, which the alternative will be able to support. We'll still maintain LOS E or something like that, and the average will be C, but that might not necessarily be comforting to the property owners who live there on 35th. So you see what I'm saying? So,
would you yield for a moment? So are you asking just to have the property owners on 35th notified because their street would be expanded?
I would. Well, he said in that sort of that immediate area between 240th and 228th. So if if you are just a property owner on 35th, but then there are other properties that probably access 35th for a lot of their transportation movements.
Sure. So if we take it from Fitzgerald to 45th, I think you would get everybody that accesses 35th.
I don't think
I'm personally in favor of what you originally suggested,
Okay.
which was up 35th.
Then if the council will only support property owners who live on 35th, at least we'll have that notification to those property owners.
Okay.
Because, okay, is that fine?
You have 4 nodding heads on this side.
And then there was the mention about our lack of coordination with Snohomish County, that they continue to have the 39th connector in their transportation plan and are making land use decisions based on that. Can we have some coordination with Snohomish County before the November 18th meeting?
We've already talked to Public Works at Snow County and started that discussion.
Okay. And then I guess we have a lot of information that's presented to us tonight. I'm still weighing in my mind what the best option is with the 39th connector, but I noticed that in the staff report, if we were talking about the 35th alternative, it didn't seem like roundabouts were still considered a viable option. You mentioned traffic lights at all of those intersections, and that roundabouts are more problematic. And I guess I would hope that roundabouts would not be dropped off as a possible consideration for the 35th alternative. And then one other question is, if we do abandon the 39th connector, can we still preserve property within that within that right of way, with the possibility that in 10, 20 years funding does become available? I mean, there's currently your 39th roadway that exists, but would we want to keep some of that property open, or at least consider it right of way, I guess? I had a lot of questions about the LID regulations, but I think I'm just going to hold those for right now. But I did want to speak to some of the history that Councilmember Lamb has brought up, and I agree that there was a decision that area in the urban growth areas had to be zoned at 4 units per acre. There was this bright line of 4 units per acre, and so there was concern that some of the land in our city that was zoned R40,000 or 1 unit per acre didn't conform with the Growth Management Act. And I happen to have a copy of the Litowitz test dated 2004. I got it when I was on Planning Commission. And if I could just read in here what it says, what the Litowitz test is, because this was a ruling that allowed jurisdictions to have zoning less than 4 units per acre, which is what we have here in this area and in Norway Hill. So, quote, "The Litowitz test is the name given to a part of a relatively recent," which this was dated in 2004, Central Puget Sound Growth Management Hearings Board decision in Litowitz et al. Versus the City of Federal Way. In final decision and order of that case, the Hearings Board established the Litowitz test for determining when it may be reasonable to adopt a zoning density of less than 4 dwelling units per acre to better protect the functions and values of environmentally sensitive or critical areas as required by the Growth Management Act. According to the final decision and order, the test consists of 3 criteria. 1, when environmentally sensitive areas are large in scope. 2, their structures are and function are complex. And 3, their rank order is high. And it was that Litowitz test that was applied to this area that allows greater protection than what we see maybe elsewhere in the city. So I just wanted to add that little piece of information about the Litowitz test and why we have zoning here that's different than elsewhere in the city.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Sandberg. Anyone else? Councilmember Evans.
I have some questions too of staff, but I want to, as I read through this document, these pages of the staff report and things, I really thought the staff did an excellent job in analyzing the issues, explaining them, giving alternatives, and then recommending what would be the best solution for the environment, for land use, and all those things. I really think we have a good proposal in front of us. So I appreciate the work that they did on that. And I also appreciate the comments of the public. The public doesn't have the opportunity to see many of the documents and research that as a council as we do. I think, I don't know. So I appreciate their input and concerns on this. A couple questions I had. First on the connector, and there was a question I think from the public about this, is the traffic analysis that was done. We hired a professional transportation consultant, someone who deals in this. That is their job, to study transportation alternatives and those types of things. And they did the study for the entire comp plan update. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so then they also looked at this area and gave some recommendations. And as was mentioned, this area, traffic signals were looked at, widening roads and various traffic improvements and things. And they were evaluated and looked at. But I guess one of the questions I have about that, the improvements to 35th, the improvement to the intersections at 240th and 35th and 228th and 35th and 39th and 228th, all those different projects that were mentioned in there as an alternative to the connector of putting traffic through there, do those requirements or do those potential projects require additional right-of-way, or could all of that be done within the existing right-of-way?
They would require right-of-way.
Okay. So, and then the cost of those, a number somewhere was come up with, what, 40 or 50 million or something. So, right. Which is, I'm assuming, no design's been done on any of this, so that's a very preliminary reach up in the air and grab a reasonable estimate of what we think this is. I mean, it could be less, it could be more, but this is an idea of what we think it could be.
Yes, and you have to understand that a lot of the work in this area is not just construction. A lot of it is right-of-way.
Acquisition. Right.
And environmental mitigation. And those things are hard to quantify until you actually get into the process.
Yeah, right. And that same holds true for the Bothell connector itself. I mean, we do have 60% design of that roadway through our city, through Bothell. I don't know if they have that on the Snohomish County side. If they went to
right. So we took the 60% design. It's the southern portion. If you look in the final EIS, there's two portions. There's one north of 228th and one south of 228th. The portion south of 228th is the Bothell connector, and half of that is in the county and half of it is not. That's the price tag that we gave. And we put a range in there because that has been designed to a higher level, but that was back in 2007, and things change. And a significant amount of that cost is purchasing right-of-way, and not just right-of-way for the road itself, which is a 3-lane road, by the way. It's not 5 lanes. But also detention ponds if we need it, mitigation. If we affect wetlands, we would have to put wetlands back somewhere, and typically you buy the wetland land and then you do the mitigation on top of that. So, and then environmental requirements could change. So between the right-of-way acquisition and the right-of-way acquisition and environment, there's kind of that range there that in the last 7 years it could have changed quite a bit. So we gave you a range. We think we could potentially do it a little cheaper, so we gave a range of $60 to $80 million.
And the question was asked, is that just for the Bothell side, or is that for the entire roadway?
That's the roadway from 240th to connected to 228th.
All the way through, 80 million?
All the way through. But in the final EIS, they talk about 2 phases, because way back in early 2000s, there was discussion about widening the road between 228th and Maltby Road as well, which is 3 lanes now. There was discussion about whether it should be 3 lanes or 5 lanes. And way back then as well, Snohomish County had in the funding package money to improve that side of the road as well. That's the same package that we went to the Regional Transportation Investment District, the voters, to fund this project, which got voted down. So both of them got voted down.
So our intent was never to pay for the entire roadway from 240th to 228th. That's not the city's full responsibility.
Correct.
The county would pay some of that.
Correct. The county had half the share. The mechanism we were going to use was the Regional Transportation Investment District, which would have paid for the bulk of it.
But in the CFP that we adopt every year and look at, the Bothell Connector's been in there every year, and there's actually been discussion on this council to remove the Bothell Connector in the past, and I've been one who's pushed to keep it on there because I think it is a good alternative. It is a good route, realizing that funding is difficult. But I think it's in the CFP, we've had $80 million in there for the CFP. I guess I was thinking that was for our Bothell side of the improvement.
Total project cost.
So why would we show $80 million in our, would we be the project manager for that project and manage it, and we would get money from the county to do the county side, but we'd manage the entire project? I don't.
That's exactly how it is. We are basically in interlocal agreement with the county for this project, but the city's desire is we're pushing the project, and we had a desire to move forward with this project. And essentially what we're doing, any of our CFP projects, we give the total cost of the project. And in the funding line items, we break down, once we determine what the funding mechanisms are going to be, we would break down where the sources of funding are coming from.
Okay, and just, so the county, so if it's a 1.4 mile segment, I think, from 240th to, I think I read that somewhere in here. So assuming we take half of that and the county takes, city's got to come up with 40 million and the county's got to come up with 40 million.
Correct.
From mitigation fees. Go ahead.
Councilor Evans, if you would yield for just one moment. I mean, Steve, I was just pulling up on Google Earth. 39th now, I mean, 39th is essentially fully developed on the Snohomish County side. On the Snohomish County side going north, north of 228th.
On this project?
No, I'm talking about where outside of our city limits, north on 39th, and that's a 2-lane road. That doesn't even have a center turning lane, and they have sidewalks on both sides of that road.
So between 228th and Maltby?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the mitigation, traffic mitigation fees that were collected on all those residential units up 29th, or up 39th, all those 1,000 homes that were developed up there between 228th and Maltby Road, chances are those mitigation fees were spent on that section. Well, hopefully they were spent on that, but they do have a tendency to be used wherever they're needed, I guess, in the county. But so, you know, the question is the county's $40 million even there or available to them in any way?
So in a memorandum I tried to put together and discuss the funding mechanisms. Projects of this size are challenged to be funded just by local agencies, Snow County as well as us. Snow County is much larger than us, but they also have a larger area they need to cover. The county is typically divided into sections, transportation sections, and their impact fees or mitigation money are typically spent within those areas they're collected with. Not necessarily assigned project by project, but the money stays within that particular area.
Right.
Usually the strategy for a project of this size in the past has been to go through a regional transportation package because $80 million is a lot of money. In the past, as in 2007, the region comes together and they have a lot of large projects, some of the mega projects you can talk about, the Seattle projects, and oftentimes they have a portion of that which is assigned to smaller agencies and smaller roadways. This is a minor arterial. It's not a primary arterial. It's not a highway. And a lot of those projects used to get funded through those regional transportation packages. There has not been a regional transportation package since 2007 when the last one voted down, and we haven't heard word of any others coming up. So we look at other options, and the other options are federal grants funding or getting appropriations from, state legislature or something like that. Federal grant funds typically won't fund something on the order of an $80 million project, regardless if $40 million is the city and $40 million is the county. Usually for a project, we can get maybe up to about $10 million. That's probably federal money plus state money, grant funding sources, which are competitive. So you have to compete for those. And the routes that typically get funded are the ones that carry regional amounts of traffic, like 522, for example. So then the last option is to try to get appropriation from the state, but the state is struggling as well. They can't fund their large projects, much less smaller projects. So essentially what happens is a project of this size, if we can get $10 million, the local agencies would still have to come up with $70 million or $60 million, which is usually beyond the reach of agencies our size. And that's why it hasn't been funded since then.
And Steve, I appreciate that explanation, and you did define that in the staff report, and I read that, and it was clear what the alternatives were. So, just to continue on quickly with this, so
just a quick second, sorry to stop you. Sure. You are 11 minutes into your 9 minutes of time. How much more time would you
Well,
think
but
you would
yeah,
need?
you can't count Steve's time as part of my time.
I'm going to do it before you. So we're arguing on who's going to give you more time. I'm willing to give you 7 minutes of my time.
Well, I'm gonna. So, funding for the Bothell connector is difficult at best if we can find it. And it has the benefits that's been discussed earlier. If 39th doesn't go through, there's a benefit, there's a disadvantage that's maybe the best transportation corridor, but it's a disadvantage to the environment that would be impacted by that road. So back now to the route 228th down, or 39th down west on 228th, then you make a left and turn down on 35th, all that you lined out there. So we not only have to buy right-of-way, but we have to do improvements there for that. So I did, it does state in here, Councilmember Sandberg, and I'm sure you saw it, but it is in the staff report here where they do staff recommendation, or at least roundabouts would work as well or better than traffic signals. And so I think, at least I got the impression from the staff report that they did recommend roundabouts over these other street improvements.
I would say that
206.
Yeah, I would say that this is very early in the process. We would consider both. We have looked at both. Sure. And I think if we were to get into design of the alternative route, we would look at both and determine what fit best, what was most economical, work best. All those factors would go in. That's just more detailed than at this planning level, I think, at this point.
And I was going to ask you the question about funding options, which we don't have time to go into that. I know it's bleak at best of what the opportunities are. I know that we have a transportation improvement plan here in the city that is unfunded, has many, many projects in it. So project funding for these projects, for these road improvements, is difficult at best and very competitive. And hopefully we would get some, but we wouldn't. I at least at this point, seems like to me the roundabouts are a less expensive than improving roadways, and whether or not the traffic functions better through there or not, I guess you'll you'll look at that and give some idea in the future. But at least to me, I think and those type of improvements can be done on a phased basis. We can do a little bit at a time and get those done instead of having to do a whole project. Okay. I'll cut her off right there and come back at another time. Thank you.
You had 2 more minutes of Councilmember Agnew's time.
What's the date of the EIS? Does anybody know?
2006. I believe it's November 2006 was the final EIS.
Okay. So I came on the council in 2008, and I know I reviewed the EIS in some of those decisions that we did, just as I reviewed, the Litowitz information, some of that. I know the council's provided that to us before, but it's not that we haven't seen that information before. We have seen it over the years. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. 2 more? Yeah, Councilmember Agnew.
Well, it's a very passionate subject. I, at this point in time, feel that the 39th Street connector, we need to dissolve that. We need to just end that. Former council member Perry said it was the wrong decision at the time. I agree with her. I don't agree with her. I think it was the right decision at one point in time. Oh, didn't you? I'm sorry.
Okay. People can't hear you on the speaker, so I'll just say that the record shows that Andrea Perry did not say she agreed with it. There you go. How's that? Actually, we're in council deliberations at this point, so thank you. Ma'am, we're not going to take public comment. We already had the opportunity. Thank you.
But you misrepresented what I said. So I said it was a tough decision.
And I retract my statement.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure it was
I retract my statement. But I still think the 39th Street connector is probably not the most effective means of travel. I think the staff and the residents and developers in the Nick-Fuchapa area have all come and made concessions. I don't think they're going to make everybody happy, but I think the concessions they made will have the least amount of impact on the environment. I heard a gentleman earlier, and I hope I got this one right, state that we needed to think about a little common sense, and I agree with that. So we're going to make a decision on November 18th. I think staff's done a good job, and I think it's going to be a tough decision.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Agnew. Councilmember William?
So I have a couple of questions for staff. So I appreciate that we're going to notice the 35th residents on 35th. We've already gone over that. So the communication with Snohomish County, I did have a chance to talk to Councilmember Terry Ryan with Snohomish County, as well as the Public Works Director of Snohomish County today, just to check, to say, hey, we've had some allegations made by council members that they pocketed the money, moved out of the area, they're not willing to do the project, and this sort of thing. So I just asked for clarification, and what I was informed about is that the Snohomish County Comprehensive Plan transportation element is currently at the Planning Commission at the Snohomish County level, and it does include the 39th connector right now. So at this point, they would need to have their comp plan adjusted by the council to accommodate our changes. And they were, I mean, it's just one of the council members, and the Public Works Director, they're willing to do that. But nobody's communicated with them, is what they told me. So there's a lot of issues with that. From what I understand from growth management, the Growth Management Act, we have to nest within the county plan. Is that correct? We have to align with the county plan. The county plans have to align with the Puget Sound Regional Council's plan for the region. Is that a fair statement for?
I'm not sure, but I think we all have to nest into the PSRC plan, basically. We don't have to nest into the county plan. We coordinate with the county. As far as transportation, I can't speak for the land use side.
Right, for the transportation piece.
Yeah, we don't fall under Snohomish County. We are an agency under PSRC in the overall transportation plan. So we have our own separate plan.
Okay, so we can just do what we want inside the city and not have align with the county on a road that goes out into the county?
Again, we talked with staff at the county, and they're not through with their process either, but I believe we're not through with our process either, so we haven't pulled the trigger and told them one way or the other as well, because I don't think we've made a decision yet. But we have talked to them. We've sat down with our planners and talked to them about what their feelings would be and how this goes and everything, and I think we're aligned. You're correct. It's still listed there, and they told us as well. But they also told us that if that changes, we can contact them and they can adjust. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I just emphasize I think that's really important to do with the county because they're upzoning the areas along the 39th connector and
right.
If,
so
if
one of
it
the
goes
first
away,
things we did from our last meeting was go talk to the county, the staff people there. And again, at this point, we didn't feel we had any decision made, so we did not tell them which way we were going to go. We just warned them that this is what we're considering, talked to them about ramifications and their process and timeline, and it still seems to be workable within their timeline.
And they did mention to me there's potential money available to fund whatever alignment we choose to use for this area from Snohomish County. So
who's they? Terry?
Yeah, I talked to Terry Ryan. He's the council member of Snohomish County for our district. So.
Oh, yeah.
So I just have so I'm curious, so why haven't we looked at reviewing the zoning for just Zone 1 in isolation of the other zones within the Nick-Fuchapa?
Could you explain that question in a little more detail to me, please?
We've received public testimony tonight quite a bit about Zone 1 and its impacts to the streams and wetlands and the other critical areas in the Nick-Fuchapa. And it just, I thought it was a valid question. Why are the properties in Zone 1, we have to look at this whole area as one? Why aren't we looking at that one zone? Or what was the decision made? Why was the decision made to just look at the whole area and not Zone 1 in isolation?
This area was, proposed plan and code amendments were brought to council as part of the, I think it's part of the 2013 docket originally. And the proposal at that time was to examine both both the Fitzgerald and Canyon Creek sub-areas so that we could look at it in as a whole and the effect of the regulations as a whole and not just in isolation for one area. So that was a decision that was made back at that time.
Okay. And the many years before that?
I mean, the from a planning perspective, the preferred method has always been to look at, to do things on a sub-area basis rather than for a much smaller, discrete area.
Okay. So, so what is the status of fixing the ponding on the road on 240th? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
South of 240th on 39th.
I'll take a shot in there, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is we went out and tried to get a bid to get some initial work done. It came in extremely high. Our crews, because of the short window before the really rainy season, they're going to try to do some work over the next few weeks. Yep, and see what we can do to address that. And that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, stop the timer, though. Okay.
Your timer is currently stopped.
The problem with that drainage area is coming from private property. Is that fair to say? So our hands, that's more of a challenge to resolve a problem on private property that we don't have control of. It's coming and affecting our right-of-way, and I'm speaking for the Public Works Director, which I don't mean to do, but that's what's been explained to me. So there's a challenge to get an interim fix to at least get the channel opened up a little bit so we can relieve some drainage off the road. But the long-term solution is to work with a private landowner which is the business park, is my understanding, to resolve that issue. The city's not creating the problem. It's being created by private property. We need to work with them to resolve that. I don't know if the Public Works Director wants to add to that, or if I said anything wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, just so you know and the public knows that that is being worked on, and it's not an easy solution, but we're working on it.
Okay. Yeah, just people asked about it, so I just wanted to follow up. I heard the same thing, that we had a solution in play. So, let's see here. Well, I'll just take the rest of my time to say a couple of things real quick. So I've made a career at protecting streams and groundwater and wetlands. I'm also the Y-Rate Salmon Recovery Council Vice Chair, which represents 28 cities and 492 square miles that are around us. And our goal is to provide salmon habitat, Chinook salmon habitat. So to me, to look at this from an environmental standpoint, I think it makes sense to follow the 2012 LID manual. I do have concerns about reducing the forest cover as well as the effective impervious area cover. It's to step back from regulations that you have already in front of you that are based on best available science, and just say that because it's not a critical areas ordinance, which it is in all essence a critical areas ordinance. I mean, it's about critical areas. To roll that back further than what's been laid out, excluding the forest and the effective impervious rollbacks, it's almost like, to me, professionally, it's like if I was a doctor and you asked me to poison my patients. Like, I can't do it. I mean, it's in my blood that I will protect and try to restore stream habitat with the last breath of in my lungs. So I just wanted to make that abundantly clear that yes, these regulations are imposed and they are more stringent than other areas, but you need to keep in mind too that I think the foresight that Bothell put in place when they created these regulations are now just being caught up with by the rest of the region. I work on committees that we're regularly hunting for streams like Park Creek and Palm Creek and Coal Creek to protect and restore. And so, and throw millions at those. I will, hold on.
No, 1 second. I need a motion to extend till 9:10.
So moved.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The floor is yours.
How many more minutes do I have? I'm
Really?
there.
A 1.
Okay.
I'll loan you mine because I didn't use all mine.
You used 11 minutes, actually, out of 9.
So I just wanted to point out that I think it's I think it's just really important to keep that in mind, that yes, these regulations are a little bit more, they're more stringent than they are in other areas, but they're vastly approaching our requirements. That's why adopting the 2012 manual to me is, great, because that is a good standard. The standards that we have in here to try to protect one of the Bruce Blackburn was very specific, that this is the best salmon habitat we have left in this city. And I'm not talking about North Creek, the main channel. I'm talking about Palm Creek and Coal Creek. There's data that we have collected as a city. It's very clear. It's a very good, and those are two very healthy streams. And to protect them, and to be honest with you, I think it's worth investing money into. Our stormwater utility, that's how every other city tries to protect these areas. So it's not all lost. It doesn't go uncompensated. I think we can work something out here. And it would just be really disheartening to see the protections that have been in place for over a decade just fall to the wayside, because we're going to wish we had them back in less than 10 years. So.
Okay. So we've all had an opportunity to speak through on this issue. And my recommendation is staff recommendation that we would come back on the 18th. We've received materials that I see sitting up there. I believe those are from Ann Agar. We've also received a couple more manuals, or the public has. We should all have those already, access to them. But we have some reading and some research to do if we so desire, which I assume all of you do. So let's consider moving it until November 18th.
So moved.
So we have a motion and a second. Any deliberation on that item? All in favor of moving into November 18th, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously to November 18th. Do we have an executive session this evening? We don't. Any further items for the good of the cause, council? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned.